and then confirm.
Hey, welcome to Full 42. We have a new guest today. We have Jaysen here with us, and we're going to talk about we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff that goes along, but we're also going to talk about books that would make good board games. I think is how we did it. Right?
Yeah. Great.
I hope so, because that's what my list is. So.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that. Talk about a bunch of stuff. Before we get to that, because that's what we do. Say hi to everybody in the chat as you pop up. Should we do announcements? Should we ask Jaysen who he is and all that stuff?
I don't know. Since it's our first show ever that we've ever done and we have no idea what we're doing, I guess why would we even have some sort of order to the show?
This is episode 204. But yeah, you're right. I always come at it with just like, I don't know. Let's say things.
Yeah, just word vomit right out of the gate for a good minute. It's good.
That's part of our. That's the plan is not the plan.
No, the plan.
It's the banter. It's the banter part, right?
For us, yes. Yeah, we should. Hi guys, how's everybody doing? Nikki and Brandon are both on, and they're in the car, so that's a little weird. You guys should probably concentrate on driving, maybe.
Yeah, if you're driving, don't text and watch this and stuff.
Yeah, no, don't do that.
Watch us later. We're not that important. We're not that entertaining.
No. But yeah, we have Jaysen Headley with us tonight. I've been looking forward to. I've already posted about it. I've been looking forward to this episode for a while. I've gotten to know Jaysen for since just before Gen Con, I think, when we first kind of met introductory wise. And I adore your content. There's a lot of stuff that you do that we can talk about and get into. If those don't know, the reason the title of the show is Books to Games, you have your own publishing company now with books, and you are
ezeekat,
a big book person.
Yeah, I started as a bookish content creator. Like when I started doing content, it was all books, and then I transitioned into doing board games a little bit, and then now it's basically half and half. So I do all the things now.
Well, and the Whispers and Crinkles, which I adore.
Yes, and I have a lot of like little offshoot side things that I do as well.
Yeah, they're great. So yeah, I have some questions. Hey, howdy. I have some questions just personally because we've talked a little bit, but never like how did you start and where did it come from and where's your passion with where'd the publishing side come from? But yeah, we have some stuff. So I think to get started, maybe we do the lightning round. Throw Jaysen right into the fire.
Oh God, okay.
Just even before announcements and all that stuff and Luca painting.
I guess we could do that first.
Yeah, let's ease into it a little bit.
All right, fine. I was ready to light the fire.
We'll cook them like a frog, where it will slowly turn up the heat.
Okay.
I feel like there are other things you could cook with slow heat other than frogs. I don't know.
There's that metaphor or whatever it is, where they say you put a frog in a pan and you turn. I don't even know if that's really how.
What? I've never heard this.
You've never heard this before?
No.
Mike, have you heard this one?
No. Jaysen, you got to excuse my co-host. He's from Texas. They do things a little bit. He's also in a different time zone.
No. This is okay. So
a little weird.
It's not metaphor. It's the saying. It's a saying, right? Where you put a frog in a pan and with the water, and you turn on the stove, and it slowly boils, and the frog stays because it gets used to the temperature.
What is science? I've never heard of this.
No, I don't even know if it's true or not, but it's a saying.
Some research. This sounds very scientific.
It's like instead of taking the frog and put it in the boiling water, it'll jump out. So you have to put it in. I don't know. I don't eat frog. But
I mean,
it's a saying.
We're getting confirmations from Tim from the
rundown. It's a thing. Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't realize it was regional.
I had never. Jaysen, do you say soda or pop?
I think I say. Coke. I think I say soda.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I say soda. I grew up in Colorado though, and I feel like my whole family says pop, but my whole family's from Nebraska, other than me. So I don't know. I feel like that's a very regional thing.
Yeah, I feel like that's regional. Slow boiling frogs is. I don't know if that's regional.
It's very, very regional.
I say Coke. Everything's Coke.
And then you define it after that as what? Pepsi or 7-Up or something?
Yeah, I'll say, hey, do you want a Coke? And they'll go, yeah, give me a Pepsi.
Oh, that's super helpful.
Yeah. See, Jason, I told you, he's a little weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
We're doing our own thing.
All right, so let's do announcements then.
That's a different story. Oh, yeah, announcements. There's a banner for that. Hold on. There we go.
There is. I did the like and subscribe one already, which you never do.
Oh, right.
Yeah. I already did that one. You're good.
Oh.
There you go. Perfect.
That one? Did you do that one?
Wow.
That one? Woo! Hit the buttons, all that stuff.
So professional.
Yeah,
So-
I don't have any announcements.
No bug of the week for you?
No, it's been a boring week. Well, it's not a boring week. It's just a week I can't talk about. Been a busy week, but yeah, I'm working on a bunch of Flamecraft stuff and things like that, but I can't announce stuff yet. So,
Right. All right, fine. Be secretive.
that's what I do.
Everybody. Jason, what do you got? What's going on? Anything you want to announce or talk about?
Announcements?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I don't even know. I think the next big thing I have coming up is not really until, well, I guess not really until June. In June, I'm my publishing company, which you mentioned, is releasing our next book, which is called Of Monsters and Mainframes. This is book number 2. Yeah, book number 3 will not be until 2026. But book number 2 is called Of Monsters and Mainframes, and it is a sci-fi comedy that mixes. It's basically about a spaceship that's on the run from Dracula, and the spaceship is the main character. So it's very fun and funny, but it's also got this like really great found family element to it. And that'll be out June 3rd. That's probably my biggest announcement. I can't think of anything else exciting that's going on.
Do you say family element to it? Because then you're
got like a found family element to it.
Oh,
So,
okay.
Yeah, kind of where,
Because in your TikTok, you're like the ship wakes up and everybody's been slaughtered by.
Yeah.
Someone like,
Right.
oh,
It doesn't give you family vibes. No. So
well, my family, sure, but it's not normal.
yeah, so kind of the premise is the story is about this ship called the Demeter, and its job is to take people back and forth between Earth and Alpha Centauri. And one day it wakes up and finds that its entire crew has been killed by Dracula, which it thinks is awkward and not great. So it's like trying to figure out a way to like deal with that. And eventually the story introduces other kind of classic monsters, and some of them are friend and some of them are foe, and eventually the ship kind of puts together its own little ragtag group of monster friends to kind of fight back against Dracula. And so that's sort of so there's like a found family element, but also there is some like horror pieces to it as well. So yeah.
Who's the author?
Her name is Barbara Truelove. She's Australian, and she's been wonderful to work with. She has some other stuff out there too. So if that sounds good to you, she also has some like visual novel stuff online and some other things. And I know she's working on some more projects coming up. So yeah, she's really cool, and I'm really excited to get to work with her.
I really like the idea of classic horror with sci-fi. You don't see that often. You know, it's like space zombies happens and stuff like that, but you don't have werewolves in space and Dracula and all that stuff. That's cool.
Yeah. And there's a lot of different monsters. Like definitely there's I don't want to spoil too much, but definitely werewolves, definitely Dracula, and then there's all kinds of other Universal, like I call them Universal monsters because we live near Universal Studios and they're always doing like monster stuff, but they're like classic monsters, and so you see a lot of them throughout the story, which is really really fun. So yeah,
Cool. June 3rd, June 6th?
June 3rd. Yeah, June 3rd is the release date for that. So
cool.
We are very excited.
Excellent.
Cool. And I saw, did the first one come in like a box and you had like the ticket with the little, is that something like
so
a
those
special?
are, they do for a lot of books when they're coming out, which I'm sure you guys probably know about this, but for anyone watching, they'll do these things they'll do like PR boxes, which they'll send to like influencers and content creators, and it'll have like an advanced reader copy of the book, but then it might have some other fun stuff. So that box that I opened was sent to a bunch of like content creators, and I think some bookstores got them kind of like to build hype on the book, and it came with like Dracula's boarding ticket, and it came with some vinyl stickers and like a key fob for your room, like all kinds of fun stuff to kind of hint at things from the book. So it was very fun to kind of help put that together. So
I almost thought you were opening a game box because they had all these different elements in there. Yeah.
I know. I feel like it was a little small for a game box. I feel like when I do unboxings for games, they're like ginormous. I still have, speaking, we were talking about Critter Kitchen earlier. I still have to do that unboxing. It's just giant box sitting over by my door. And I'm just waiting till I have a day where I have like a free day that I can actually like film an unboxing of that. Cause it's like a never ending.
That's a good hour and a half of tearing through it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I'll try to squeeze it down into a minute and a half.
I apologize for that ahead of time.
It takes a while to put that thing away. One of our guests, one of the commentators, the people that are watching, commented that there were 42 bags in the game.
Not my fault. That was total coincidence.
I call bullshit. Oh. I think you purposefully made sure that there were 42 bags in that box.
No, maybe the show's just called 42 because 42 happens a lot in my life.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. No, that's fun. That's exciting. All right, so June 3rd, go look for it.
Yeah.
I assume pre-orders, you can like pre-order.
Yeah, it's available to pre-order everywhere. There'll be an audiobook released the day of same day release, and it's you can pre-order at Barnes & Noble and Amazon and bookshop.org and all of those fun places because it is right around the corner. It feels like a long way away, but it's actually not very far away. Like it's a couple months so that it'll be here. So it's very
and also if you want to check out your TikTok, it's the links in the description, so everybody can check that out.
Yeah, and Jaysen sent the link. The link that you sent me was your publishing company link, correct?
Yeah, so the publishing company is through something called Bindery, which is very similar to, if you've ever heard of Patreon. It's got a similar model to Patreon where people can sign up for different tiers, and of course, like people who are at the lower tier get, when the book comes out, they'll get the ebook to read, for example, and then they get other benefits and things like that. And then higher tiers will get like like print books, or might get their name in the book or things like that. The cool thing about it is, whereas Patreon, pretty much all the money goes to the creator who runs the Patreon, with Bindery, half of the money goes to me, but then the other half is used to then like basically fund the publishing of books. So then I get to like take submissions, pick what I want, and be kind of like an acquiring editor, and then pick the books I want to publish through my imprint, which is really cool. So that's how we were able to release of Monsters and Mainframes. But we also last year released our first book, which was House of Frank by Kay Sinclair, which is like a cozy witchy fantasy. So we're hoping to have at least one book a year going forward, though. I don't know. I don't think I'm allowed to say much, but next year we should have at least 2 books coming out in 2026. Not this year. This year we only have 1, but next year probably 2. So yeah.
Nice. Good.
Yeah. Which is cool.
That's exciting.
I am curious so when you're given submissions for books and stuff like that, how is it sort of like a board? I guess is it sort of like board games, or you go, okay, this is not quite cooked enough, so you give it back and say maybe cook some more and bring it back, or do you take it on and cook a little more on it, or kind of like?
Yeah, so we get books in 2 ways. We get books submitted via agented submissions, where like an agent has picked it up and they're submitting to us just like they would like a normal publisher. But we also a couple times a year do something called Pitch Fest, where indie authors who are unagented can submit to us, and they have like a query letter, and then they'll have the manuscript. And typically I'll read through, when I do those pitch fests, I typically get close to 200 pitches. So I'll read through the query letters first and kind of hone that down. That usually knocks out about 95% of them, because it gives me an idea of if I'm interested in the story, but also a good query letter will tell you if someone can write or if someone can't write, and also if they understand the story that they're telling, or if they don't really understand. Like if I finish your query letter and I have no idea what your book is about, I'm probably not going to continue reading, right? Because it takes a ton of time. So I go through all the query letters, and then I narrow that down, and then I will go through and read at least the first chapter of everything that I at least liked, and then I'll narrow it down, and then I usually end up only really fully reading like 3 or 4 manuscripts, sometimes maybe 5 or 6 a season. But I can only really pick 1, maybe 2 books a year to publish so far. And as time goes on, I'm sure I can, do more. But that means I have to be really, like, a book has to really blow me away. Like, I have to, like, love it with my full heart. And it still goes through, like, a traditional editing process. Like, it gets sent to an editor. There's a whole book edit, sometimes multiple book edits, line edits, copy edits, all of that stuff after. But, like, I want the book to be in a place where I really, really love it, even when I acquire it. And then all the other stuff is just going to make it even better, right? So I don't do any of the editing, though I can give feedback. I can say like, oh, I love this book, but maybe I don't love the title, or maybe I wish that this scene was longer, or I wish that there was more detail about this, or things like that. But ultimately, I'm not the editor. I'm just the person acquiring the books. So, yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Do you have any, like, we don't do these type of books and that kind of list? Like
I
if
don't know
you
if I
get
have,
something, you know, and you're like, oh,
I don't know that I have anything that's like I wouldn't do. I definitely focus. I have a lot of things that I specifically want though. Like I really try to focus most books that we publish through. I want them to have some version of found family, and that found family can be a lot of things, right? Like my first book that we published, House of Frank, was like a cozy, witchy found family story about a bunch of characters kind of living in this house together that were running this magical arboretum where they would bury the dead of magical peoples, and then those ashes would grow into magical trees. So it's like very cozy and comforting. The book is kind of dealing with grief and processing grief. And then the next book is about like a found family of like monsters basically trying to survive, right? And each book kind of deals with found family in a different way. So that's sort of the big thing that I look for is found family. But I think people are starting to catch on to that because I've noticed I'll get submissions where people like tag it as found family, and then I'll read through the query, read through it. I'm like, this has nothing. This is not found family. Like, what are you talking about? I think they're just like marking it because they know that's what I want. But that is kind of the overarching theme for what I look for my imprint specifically. But you know, there's a bunch of different imprints under Bindery now, and different people are looking for different things. Like there's one creator, she specifically wants to publish like books by indigenous authors. So that's like something that she really focuses on. And so every imprint has their own thing that they're kind of looking for. But like one of the books I'm looking at, like the first book was like cozy fantasy. The second book is sci-fi. My third book that's coming out next year is like a dark, gritty, epic fantasy. So it's less about the genre. It's more about like those themes that I really want to see that kind of tie it all together. So
yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I've never really talked to, well, that's not true. I've never really talked about how that process works to anybody. I was about to say I've never talked to anybody that published books, but
I was about to say, I don't think that's correct.
Yeah, I just haven't asked questions. Yeah, awesome. I think we got far from announcements because I just started asking questions. So.
Oh, that's okay.
Mike, did you have any announcements?
I have some announcements. More show and tell, I guess.
Oh, nice.
But I guess the first one to piggyback off of Jaysen, 3WS has a book that's currently up on pre-order on the site that comes out on Earth Day, April 22nd. The Unraveling, that's written by Keith, who's been on the show. Keith and
cool.
two other co-writers. It's pretty good. I'm a little biased behind it, but yeah, I should have talked about it last week. They went up last week and I didn't. But it's called The Unraveling. It is a book about like there are no more bipeds. They're all gone. They have officially fucked up. And the animals have now started to take over and learn and create the same hierarchy that was going on during the biped era. And we follow the main characters, a bunch of main characters, but we follow the main character, Twig, who is a little bird. Right out of the gate, you're thrown into the action. So I know there'll be an audiobook. I know it's up on pre-order. I don't know if there's a little taste of it on the site, like a little pre-read kind of thing, but go check it out. It's exciting.
Say Simon Says, and then immediately say what you want me to repeat.
I need to unplug that.
We're going that route. Say Simon Says and tell her to repeat something. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. I'm gonna unplug it if you keep messing with it. I don't know how you turned it on. But.
Wow.
You said Keith. I think Keith, if that's who it, if I remember right, reached out to me about checking that book out because that sounds familiar.
Oh, The Unraveling, Council of Crows. Yeah. The book that I gave you at Gen Con last year was the first one in a long time of a prose novel type of situation. And Keith, this one's going to be the next big one. It's already got a ton of following. It's already got a bunch of people behind it, like PETA's behind it, and the pull quotes. I haven't seen them all yet, and I don't know who they're going to put on the back, but
I thought he wrote nonfiction.
No, this is definitely fiction
because I just know because like he collects stories from people all the time, right?
Yeah, he's writing a bunch of stuff that I also can't talk about.
Okay,
but he was my.
Well, I can because I don't know, so I just made that up.
Yeah. Oh, he's got a couple that are nonfiction. He's telling stories of people's lives in a good way. People whose voice and stories should be told. But he's also the co-designer on the Tales of Myth and Legend game with me and Bobby West, and his background is in antiquities, so he's also big into Greek mythology and all that stuff as well. So he does both. He's just a great writer. And his other two, one of the, I forget his last name, Carl. He basically was like, what's the name of the band? I just lost it. Earth Crisis.
Oh,
if you look up Earth Crisis, it's like the first really like hardcore band. They started it, and he's one of the co-writers. So he's very, like, he's got a hell of a story too. But he's very Earth.
Did you say Earth Crisis?
Earth Crisis, yeah.
I thought you said Earth Christ.
Nope, Earth Crisis.
Okay,
It's a different book.
You'll get a different Google return if you look up Earth
That could
Crisis.
be part 2 of his next one, right?
Sure.
2,000 years later.
That's going to be up April 22nd. This weekend, I had the pleasure of hanging out with a bunch of people in the QsCon community with the mini convention that I run over St. Patrick's Day weekend. And I know I've shown all of the ones that I've had before, but I wanted to show off this year's poster, all signed by all the people that were there.
Wow.
I don't really get it. But this is one of the things that means so much to me when I have all the guests that are at the convention. I have all of them since I've been doing it since 2019. So it was great to see people. Brandon and Nikki came all the way in from Michigan. Michael Petrie from Maryland. So I got to hang out with a lot of awesome people. And one of the people I got to hang out with is in the chat, I believe, Dave, if he's still listening. Dave and Di haven't been to a thing since Dave had he exploded one of his vertebrae on his back and had to have massive surgery.
Oh, no.
So this was one of the returns of to gaming, and I had a special shirt made for them in true Star Wars fashion.
Aww.
That's good.
Yeah. So that was one of my highlights was just getting to see everybody and hanging out with everybody over the weekend. So yeah, that's what I got, and then I got Luca painting. If you want to do Luca painting,
Yeah. Go ahead and explain the Luca painting.
sure. Yeah, because Jason might not know. I'm sure you watch the show every Monday though, so you might already know this. But yeah. My 3-year-old and now my 2-year-old do watercolor paintings on 4x4 canvas, and we take a look at one every Monday. And like a Rorschach test kind of thing to see how crazy Chris is. Usually Chris is the crazy one in the group. Some people are
No.
but
There's some weirdos in the comments. You know who you are.
Weirdo on the show. So yeah, this is today's. This is the one we're gonna do today. I'm gonna see how dark you can make this one.
Do you know if he was looking at anything, or is it just like from his head?
No, this was just one of the paintings. Him and Mika were painting back and forth. This was the same day that he did the owl for me, but he wasn't looking at anything until the Greek owl. Last week we had.
You mean the two heads in a bed and bacon?
Sure, the bacon bed. Yep. We had Matthew Ryan on last week, and our topic was the top 5 mythologies. So I had Luca look at the owl from Clash of the Titans, and he painted
Bibbo?
Oh, cool.
the owl. And Chris saw 2 heads and a slice of bacon on a bed.
It's not dark.
He's weird. All right, so this is today's. This was done the same day.
Oh, hold on. Let me switch you. So
You don't have to do that.
yeah, I'm going to do that. So, there you go.
Oh.
That's weird. How about that one? There we go. I think
Today's. So yeah, today's. Or this was made then, and there's today's.
Okay. So comments tell us what you see in that one. You got 5 colors on there.
Yeah. I think there's. Is there white? He did one with white too, but you can never see white. I don't know if there's white in here. There might be. But.
I'll say what I see, but I'm going to wait for a few people. I'd like to hear what Jason. And mine's not going to make any sense unless you've seen Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan.
Great.
So specific. Yeah. I mean, the pink part looks like a very nice side profile of someone. Like there's a nose, a mouth, forehead.
Oh, I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah, like that looks like a very nice side profile. So maybe this is like a person like peeking out from a bush.
Okay.
In the forest.
Like a fairy coming out of the bushes. Kind of.
Yeah, there's like some bushes, there's some dirt, a rock. Maybe that's like a Leaf petal on the left.
I definitely see the leaves.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely. It could definitely be like just leaves falling as well, like fall leaves. I like that. It's not boiled foxtail.
I knew I wouldn't. I'd hear that again. Yeah. Flamingo through the seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Dinosaur dance party in the woods. You went all blurry on this.
It's not me.
Now it's getting worse.
Oh, good. Great.
An abstract green dino outside a cave coughing up smoke of one little flame. Oh, I see the green dino.
Yeah.
Yeah. His tail up in the back. Yeah. So I saw I saw basically like a nature scene and stuff, but on the ground is like the little pincher creature that they put in the ears in Star Trek 2. Like I don't remember what they're called, or if they even say what their names are. But Khan is like their pets, of course, and like picks them up and puts them in people's ears.
Oh, I'm sure they have a name. Everything,
and then it takes over their mind. I don't think they ever have a name for him in Star Trek 2. He just calls them pets. He calls them indigenous life forms from City Alpha 5.
Oh.
Just when I thought you couldn't nerdy it. Jesus.
It's what I saw.
I believe you.
Let's see. We have that child has some talent.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
SpongeBob and Patrick outside of Patrick's house. Oh, because of the rock. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
That awful earwig scene. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, when it comes crawling out with the blood and stuff. Yeah, that's best sci-fi movie ever.
So the only thing I know about this one that he told me is that was a flamingo.
Oh, someone called it. Who called the flamingo? Brandon did.
Yep, Brandon said the flamingo.
Some
that
others.
you mentioned.
They do have a name, by the way. They're called SETI eels.
Yes, I've heard that before. Okay, nice. Thanks for looking it up. I don't think they say it in the movie, but obviously they would have
like everything in Star Trek and Star Wars has a name because if they don't say it in the movie, someone wrote like a book that was in universe, or somebody asked them at a convention, "What are those things called?" And they like made up a name on the spot, and there it is.
Like I don't know what they call the little pizza that flies and lands on the back of Spock in one of those episodes, but I'm sure that has a name. Right?
The little pizza. Yeah,
there's an episode where Spock's walking around in this planet where everybody's been killed or something, and this little creature comes flying, obviously on a string, right? It's real bad graphics, but it looks like a little pizza, and it sticks to his back, and he's like, it falls to the ground.
Oh,
great TV. Oh yeah, that's true.
Is that true?
I think so. Yeah.
That sounds like fake news.
Like they call them little fellows, little guys, stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't think they know. They're not mentioned because they don't know what they are.
We're now part of the tribe. Well, things with Star Wars, there's a lot of stuff like that where you don't get characters' names and stuff until the toy comes out.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Like Yak Face. Yak Face came out and everyone was like, oh, okay, it's Yak Face because it's some guy in the background in a cantina or something. But he actually has a name, but they didn't have it at the time. So now later toys have a name. I can't remember his name. I just call him Yak Face. But
interesting.
Yak Face.
Huh. Now I want to know everything.
The more you know.
The more you know.
Any other announcement? No, we end it with the painting.
Yep. You didn't change the banner, but that's cool.
Oh, right.
Yeah. It's something that
I'm on top of it. It's a professional. There we go. Right there.
Wow.
I'm on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Dr. Edison. And what's his, the Aqualish friend's name? The one is like, you wouldn't like me. I don't like you either. You know, that guy. Anyway. I'm blabbing on.
That's Star Wars. It started with Star Trek, and then it goes to Star Wars. It's off the rails.
Yeah, it's all the same thing.
Yeah. Ooh.
I know, controversial.
Mm-hmm. All right, so yeah, let's get into the stuff now. Let's do the
lightning round.
Yeah.
You do lightning round. Okay,
Yeah.
so let me put it up here. Here we go. Lightning round.
Oh,
so
God,
the way this works,
graphics and everything.
Oh yes. So the way this works is I'm going to ask you a question. There's going to be an answer that's either taking down the yellow path or the red path.
Oh, God.
And then you'll travel down to whichever question that is. And so on, and so on, and
oh, this
so
looks
on.
complex. Oh my God, what?
Until finally you get to the bottom. And when you get to the bottom, this is all very scientific. It will tell you what fictional character you're most like.
Oh boy.
You know what's weird is I've never taken this test myself until today.
Well, you know all that. You know where everything is.
I don't have it memorized though. So I went through and I kind of got rid of some old questions, put in some newer ones and stuff because we've seen a lot of these back and forth. And I was like, oh, let me go ahead and take it. And I took it and I kind of agreed with it. It's pretty good. So we'll see where you land here. I did change the first question here in honor of you being here. I think it's a good question. God. Read the book before the movie or watch the movie before the book?
I will always read the book before the movie. Always. Because then how else are you supposed to be like, well, actually in the book, you can't do that if you watch the movie first.
Actually.
There's no one around to be like, well, actually in the movie, and nobody wants to hear that anyway. So
that's true. Nobody ever says, in the movie.
Yeah, no, nobody wants that.
No, you don't want that.
2 30-minute games or 1 1-hour game?
Ooh. I'm gonna say that's so hard. I think I'm gonna say 2 30-minute games, actually. My old age, I'm liking shorter games more and more because they're less thinking, and I'm tired.
Cooperative or competitive board games?
I'm going to say cooperative. I love cooperative games. Cooperative games a lot of times can also be played solo, and I really like solo games as well. So.
Fair enough. Be turned into a lion or an eagle?
Oh, interesting. I feel like I want to shake it up. I feel like I'm like on this yellow line forever. I'm still gonna say lion though, because birds are scary. I don't like
birds. Are scary?
Yeah, I don't like birds.
But you'd be the bird. You wouldn't scare yourself.
Yeah, that's true. But then if I saw myself in a mirror, I'd be like, I don't need that. That's
yeah, special. Eagles do famously hang around mirrors.
Yeah, it's the whole thing.
Rolling Stones or Beatles?
Okay. I'm going to go red on this one. Beatles. Yeah, we got off the yellow line for a moment.
Batman or Wolverine?
I have to say Batman. We're a DC household.
Good answer.
Yellow. Be an adventurer in D&D or a rebel fighter in Star Wars?
Oh, interesting. Probably an adventurer in D&D. I feel like the rebel fighters literally just blow up. I don't feel like they don't have great stories. So I'm going to be an adventurer.
They're the red shirts in Star Trek.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Your dreams become a streaming show or your life becomes a reality show?
Oh, I'm going to go red. Your life becomes a reality show. I don't need, I at least if my life's a reality show, I can control what's being seen. If it's dreams or streaming, you can't control any of that. That's nope.
But you could always say, hey, I can't control it.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, but because that's always worked on the internet. Oh, yeah. Hey, I couldn't control it. Like people always take that as a great answer. Mm-hmm. There's never any pushback.
People just accept everything.
Yeah.
Make a loud beep when you yawn or sneeze confetti.
Oh. I feel I'm gonna go with sneeze confetti. I think that'd be a little bit fun because otherwise you sneeze like you're sneezing spit. Confetti is way more fun than spit. Yeah, it's
but then you got to clean it up every time.
It's like, oh, I got allergies, but then party, like that's more fun. I don't like loud beeping noises, so I feel like party sneeze is better.
I think I would carry around a big bag and just go, so you wouldn't have to.
Yeah, you want to cover your mouth still, but.
It doesn't say you have to clean it up. It just says you're sneezing it.
Yeah, somebody else can clean that up. Yeah. That sounds like a them problem.
Yeah, definitely.
Live in a forest or in a houseboat?
Oh, forest, definitely. I'm not a
Ooh.
I went on a cruise last week, and that was a lot for me because boats and oceans and things like that are not my favorite things. So
We're already here.
I don't want to live on one. Wow. All right, let's see.
All right.
Science. This is all science.
It's all science, right?
Very scientific.
And you are scientifically connected to Wolverine.
Oh, how'd that happen? I specifically chose not that guy, but he just
true.
dragged me back. He was like, "Come on back here."
Yeah, I guess living in a forest did it.
Yeah, he wanted me to come back. He was like, "No, give me a second chance."
And he's definitely sneezing confetti more than he is beeping. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah,
interesting.
Definitely. I mean, he's Wolverine's not bad.
It's not a bad one to have.
He's no Batman, but he's fine. You know,
He is
fine.
no Batman.
I do believe Batman's one of the choices on here.
Who did you end up as, Chris, when you did it?
I don't know. I'd have to look at the choices. I forgot now.
Oh.
Huh. Well, hold on. I can look. I just want to give away all the choices because we haven't seen all of them. So. I was right next door to you, actually. Yeah, I was Harry Potter.
Oh, that makes sense.
All right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That makes sense?
Yeah, totally. You wave your wand everywhere at everybody.
That's the worst way it could have made sense. Which Wolverine is it? I mean, it's the one you saw. It's the one for the movies.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. He's just like a guy who lives in the woods, and he keeps getting wrangled into stuff. But really, he's just a guy who wants to. On his best day, he just wants to live in the woods and chop wood, and that's fine.
That's an interesting question, though. Like, if you were Wolverine, you live much longer than everyone else around you, so you get to watch everyone die over and over.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah. I
mean, it gives me more time to read,
sure.
more time to get stuff done.
Yeah,
I got stuff to do, so that's fine.
That's a good point.
They'll be missed. Kumbaya. Goodbye.
Yeah, and if you ever get shot in the head and then all your memories get erased, like Wolverine, you can reread all your favorite books.
Exactly. I mean, I have a pretty terrible memory anyway, so I just assume most days I've been shot in the head and my memory's been erased. So it works out.
It's like Groundhog's Day without the memory.
Yeah.
Oof. God, that would be brutal. Well, that was fun.
Yeah, that was fun.
How would you know?
You got to Wolverine. That was weird.
You might be in Groundhog Day without the memory now, and you wouldn't know.
I'm fine with that. I don't need to know. The less information I have, the better, honestly.
You'd basically be Ned Flanders.
Sure.
You'd be repeating the day with him, but you don't remember it, right?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Hope it's a good day.
I really want to break that logic on you.
But you can't.
No, I'll think about it another day.
Okay, so
all right. Before I have a question. I have a question.
Question.
Oh.
All right. So we talked a little bit before. You have your own book publishing company. Where did all of that come from? Like what? You only have a couple books. I've seen some of your videos. You have like one shelf of small. Like it's not really a big book collection that you have. So where did that desire come from?
What is that sarcasm?
Yeah, totally.
I was like, can I live in this land where I don't have too many books and there's not multiple bookshelves all over the house? Where did all of that start?
Yeah. Obviously we read books, like we have different draws to reading books, why we read books, why we jump into certain types of books. And you obviously have a ginormous collection and you love books. So what happened where you were like, I have this giant thing, now I want to publish and become a voice for people? Where did that come from?
Yeah, I mean, I started creating content back in 2020 during the pandemic, and at the time, I actually did only have like one bookshelf that was like full of books, and as things grew, and I started collecting more books, and I started like making reading like more of a full-time thing, and companies, were sending me books at the time. I don't really get as many books from companies anymore because I've kind of like shut that door a little bit because it just got too crazy. And I just was so behind. I was like, you can send me a book, but I'm never going to get to reading it. So you might as well just not do that because I'm so behind all the time. I'd rather just pick what I actually want to read and not be worried about all these things coming in all the time. But I was doing all of that for many years. And then back in 2020, end of 2023, I got an email from Bindery, which is the company that my imprint is through. And they basically had this idea. They were like, we want the people who are starting it came from a background of publishing. Like one of them came from publishing and one of them came from a Patreon background. And they wanted to kind of combine those two ideas. And they reached out to several different creators. And when I first saw it, I get a lot of emails that I just assume are scams because, I mean, on any given day, I'll get at least 5 emails of companies trying to ask me if I want to promote their new like AI book writing service. And I'm like, no, I definitely don't want to promote that.
Yeah. So your name attached to that. Sure.
Yeah. So I didn't really take it too seriously. And then a friend of mine who also makes book content reached out to me, was like, I just had a meeting with these guys and this is really, really cool. And it's really amazing. And you need to talk with them. And so I set up a meeting with them to discuss. And I just really loved the idea. I mean, I think in the last 4 years, we've really seen 5 years, we've really seen Book Talk and bookish space, like bookish spaces have been around forever, right? BookTube and Tumblr, there was a big bookish community, and Twitter and Instagram, and all of these places had big, even back in the days of just like forums and message boards, there have been book communities, but none of them has really harnessed the power of like selling books, like flat out getting people to spend money on books the way that Book Talk has, right? Like Book Talk saved Barnes and Noble from going out of business during the pandemic because it was driving so much business into Barnes and Noble. That's why Barnes and Noble have like Book Talk tables, because Book Talk literally was just sending people in droves into the store. And so the idea that people who were creating that excitement for books that they really liked online could then decide on books that they wanted to help bring into the world was really was a really cool idea. But I also think it's a really cool idea too, because we have the opportunity to pick stuff that maybe traditional publishers wouldn't even look at, right? It's not on trend. It's not something that they're looking for. It's not, it's not something that checks a box for them. So they just don't care about it. And so we are able to really search out things that we think are great and search out authors from a lot of diverse backgrounds and voices and things like that to help, and then use our platforms to basically help lift them up and get them a platform and get people to read their book, which I just thought was a really, really cool idea and a really cool use of my time and my energy and my platform. Like, right. It was a way to use my platform to do something that I thought was really good and really like pushing publishing in a direction that I wanted it to go. So I was one of the original people that signed on with Bindery. And when the books launched last fall, House of Frank was one of the first 4 books to come out of that, like this new publishing hybrid thing. Yeah. And then the next round, like the spring season, is what will be coming out in June. I just loved the idea. And I think it's a really cool, I feel like when you talk to people that are in traditional publishing, there's like kind of a sense of doom and gloom right now. Like they don't really know what to put out. They take a really long time to publish things, right? Like from this day you get signed to the day your book comes out with a traditional publisher, a lot of times that can be like 2 or 3 years. And when they're publishing to trend, they're being outpaced by indie publishing, because indie publishing can get stuff out so much faster. So like Bindery, typically when we pick a book up, it's usually out within a year of being picked up, if not less. And so that helps us to really stay on trend more. And like I said, pick up stuff that's a little bit weirder, a little bit off the beaten path that maybe won't even get a second glance from a traditional publisher. So, and all of that just seemed really cool to me. So, yeah.
That's cool. I mean, it's similar overlap with board games. You want to try and there's stuff that's on trend and stuff that will get fast tracked, but you always want to find something that's different. That's not just a regurgitation of the same. Oh, I've played this. It's just this one has animals. That one had whatever the hell. It's cool that you can control it. It feels good when you can not control in a negative way, but control what's coming out, because you get to pick it. Like you get to be like put your fingerprint on it and be like, this should be out there. This should be a thing that could, like you said, get kind of, I don't know, lost in the shuffle or put underneath other stuff as not important when it is important to other people. That's really cool.
Yeah, and we get to be a part of that whole process. So I'm picking the book, but then I get to I have an ongoing conversation with the author of the book. I get to be part of the cover design conversations, and all of it is just this very collaborative process between myself and the team at Bindery and the author. And a lot of times in traditional publishing, authors don't have any say in their cover, like what their cover is going to look like, right? Every single cover meeting we have, the author is on the call with us, like giving their feedback, giving their thoughts, what they want, what they don't like, what they like. And I just think that collaboration process is really, really special. And I think it ends up making really great products at the end of it because everybody just feels like so invested in it.
Well, also gives it a little bit more of a natural presence too, because last year when House of Frank came out, you went down to the city for the release.
Yeah, and I'll be going back to the city for the release of Monsters and Mainframes. So awesome. We're very like hands-on with it, and we want to be, we're another thing that's really cool is a lot of the authors. So there's this big push in traditional publishing where like they want authors to also be their own little marketing team, right? Like they want authors to have social media presence and be selling their books on social media and doing all of this stuff. And there have even been, and this is not, of course, true across the board, but there have been horror stories of people who submitted their books to a publisher and the publisher said, we won't even consider your book if you don't have this many followers on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, right? And so this is great because all of the authors that I've worked with so far, they don't have huge social media presence. They have a little bit, but they also don't want to have to be their own marketing person. They want to be a writer, right? Like they want to be an author and they want that to be their main focus. Whereas that, and then they get to hand that part off to me to like really like hype up their book and get people excited about, which I think is really cool.
Right.
Is there market research for publishers about trends in publishing, types of books, meta of games with certain mechanisms, etc.? I don't know if there is in board games. In books, there really isn't. You just really have to have your finger on the pulse of what's going on, which is why I think TikTok is so great because you're constantly seeing what is like trending and what people are excited about. But like in board games, it's kind of the same thing, right?
I think so. Like there's talk behind the curtain. Like we've talked about on the show about like what we think the next trend is going to be, right? There's anthropomorphic animals is a thing. And then before that, it was zombies, right? Zombies always come back around. But like we've talked about how we think witches are the next thing, the next trend, the next big thing. So there is. I don't know if there's like a document or anything. I think it's more of a hunch in the board game industry than anything.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
You just kind of have to keep your eyes on things all the time to just keep an eye on and sometimes something, I think it's the most fun when something completely out of left field becomes like the trending thing. Like that to me is when it is the most exciting, is when it's something you just don't expect comes out. I'm sure people who are like trying to do this professionally and follow trends hate that, but I think it's really fun.
Well, yeah, that's kind of like, you never know, right? If there was a cookie cutter way to do this, then everyone would do it. And where does Flip 7 come from, or where does all the duos or duels or the 2-player stuff all of a sudden hit, and now everyone was doing like trying to stay ahead of that curve is a challenge, but you also can get lost in it with so many things. So it's nice when you have someone who can make sure that those trends and those things are front and center and popular and out there for people. And
the University of Houston, I think there's only a few universities that have it, but there's an actual degree as a futurist, and so you can become a futurist if you go there and take that degree, and your whole job is to look at trends and figure out for companies where those trends are going to be that they can be ahead of it, right? But there's an entire degree in the University of Houston for it.
I love that they called themselves futurists. Like, I really liked that they were like, this is like just a normal marketing job, but we're gonna give it a really cool name.
Yeah.
Just another thing coming out of Texas that's weird. That's all.
Right.
At least I hope they still have it. They did it early 2000s when I worked there. So
that's cool. That's cool. Well, as I've said, I love all. Oh, so I guess my follow up. Another question? I don't know. So
you're saying mushrooms?
Probably because they're talking about the cozy genre.
Oh,
no,
mushrooms are cozy.
One of the trends,
I don't know. The problem with mushrooms is I feel like everybody came out with a mushroom game and they all named it mycelia or mycelium, the same time.
Something
And
like
that got lost in the shuffle because it was like,
Yeah.
which one are we even talking about?
Yeah. When we were looking at Julio Nazario's game, we originally had it. It was Windmill Garden, and it was about planting flowers around this windmill, and you know, it was a garden of flowers. And we were like, oh, flower games, like there's a lot of them out there. And then we were kind of like brainstorming what we could change it to, and we thought coral, like we'll just do coral gardens, and you're building the coral in the ocean in this section, whatever. So we worked on it. We started like prototyping it and think taking it, and we changed things over, and Julio is he's an amazing human and turned it around real quick. And all of a sudden at the end of 2024 there's 3 fucking coral games coming out. It's like, all right, well, I guess coral's coming out. Like you never know, right? You have no idea, but it's just it's if you have that ability to bring a light to something for whatever reason, like if you're using it properly, things will happen, which is cool. But to try and predict is it's absolutely,
well, I mean, we're all consumers, so we're all part of the same zeitgeist. So if you're thinking, oh, I've got a new idea that isn't being done, there's more than likely 10 other people thinking the exact same thought, right? So that's
for
how
sure
it's happening. But
all right. So you have your books, you're doing your thing, you start doing content during the pandemic, you said, correct?
Yeah. I started back in March. I think it was March of 2020 was when I started.
Oh, like, right. So this is like your fifth anniversary of doing this.
Yeah. I've now been doing this 5 years, which is crazy, and full time 2 years. As of April, full time 2 years. So it's been a journey.
Well,
I remember we were doing the board game design class in the 10th grade high school, and it was on St. Patrick's Day that they made the announcement in this high school that everyone had to leave, and then that was it. Like,
oh my god,
had to figure out remote, and then the next year was like some sort of hybrid bullshit that they were doing. But it was on St. Patrick's Day of 2020 that it all shut down. It was weird.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, happy St. Patrick's Day.
Got some green on there.
The green, cool.
It's in there somewhere.
It's there. All right, so you're doing the book stuff, and then board games come along, because now, I mean, for those that haven't seen any of your other stuff, like if you haven't seen Jaysen's stuff, please go look at it. It's grown exponentially from when I started. Like, the stuff you've been doing is just, you can consume Jaysen's stuff and have enough to fill your day. But I
post a lot.
You do, and it's all great. None of it is. I mean, you make fun of yourself. You make fun of the piles of books behind you, but you have board game content. You have book content. You do the Whispers and Crinkles, which I mentioned at the top of the show. What was next for you? You were doing the book stuff, and then did games come next?
Yeah, I think the next thing because games are already a pretty big part of our lives. Like I discovered games back when we lived in New York, which was before we even moved down to Florida, and we were living in Florida when the pandemic happened. And I already had a pretty sizable collection of board games, and I want to add this. I want to talk about board games a little bit on here too. I want to add that to what I'm doing, and it's generally frowned upon on social media to like have multiple niches. They always tell you, like, pick a niche and stay on that niche and really focus on that thing. And I was like, I don't want to stay on the one thing. I want to talk about multiple things. So I think that board games was the second. I also, right around that time, started doing reaction content as well. So I now do reactions to One Piece, but my first thing I did reaction to was Doctor Who. And so those were kind of around the same time. And at first, I was doing very little board game content. I think I was doing it was like 10% of what I was doing. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Yeah. We
just happened to have the blank area.
And I think because I was enjoying, like when I would go to conventions and people, liked what I had been doing, even though it was very little, I felt, I don't know, the board game community just felt like such a family. And especially the like online board game community felt like such a family. It made me want to do more. And I remember going to, I think it was Gen Con 2023, I want to say. And I went, I think that was the year, it was 2023 or 2022. One of those years I went as a content creator, and I met other content creators that were doing board game stuff. And I specifically remembered feeling like a really heavy dose of imposter syndrome. And I was like, these people are like doing this really hardcore. They've got like YouTube channels. They're doing content all the time. They're doing all this stuff. Like, they deserve to be here as content creators. What even the hell am I doing here? Like, I'm mostly a book creator. I'm barely doing any board game things. Like, I should not be here as a creator. Like, it doesn't make sense. And so that year I committed myself. I was like, I don't want to ever feel like that again at Gen Con. So I'm going to really focus on bringing board game content up to being half of what I do alongside books. So I really spent that year like building out my board game content to where it is now, where it's pretty much split down the middle. And that from then on, now board games is like a huge part of what I do on the internet, which is really cool. I mean, I love board games. So that's a really cool thing that I now feel like I have kind of staked my claim as like being in that part of the community, which I think is cool.
I mean, you could argue that Barnes and Noble's done the same thing, right? Like my Barnes and Noble's have board games and have books at this point. So there's some merging of that audience. Yeah,
there definitely is. And I oftentimes tell people when I'm like in meetings or I'm talking with them about like my content, and especially when I'm in meetings with like board game publishers, like I get messages constantly, weekly, sometimes daily, from people that are in my community that will say, oh, I went to Barnes and Noble to pick up my, to pick up this newest book. And I saw a board game that you talked about that looked really cool. So we actually just bought our first board game today. Right. And that to me is really special because it means that I'm able to kind of cross those lines of like getting board game people excited about some of the books that I'm reading. And then also getting these book people to like get excited about board games. And right. The whole thing of loving a hobby is you want more people to be involved in it, right? Like you want more people to check it out. And so I think that merging is really, really cool. So when I'm in meetings with publishers, one of my first questions I always ask is this going to be in Barnes & Noble? Because I know that's where my audience is shopping. And so that's always like a guaranteed, like, okay, I know this will be a good mix, right? Like I know this will work really well for my audience.
If someone says, I'm an avid reader, I love books and stuff, what board game should I jump into first? What would you say?
Oh, that's a hard question. What
do they read, right?
Right. Like, what do they read? I a lot of times will point people. I still a lot of times point people to like the classics, right? Like I'll point people towards something like Splendor or something like Azul, because those, I think, just because you read doesn't necessarily mean that you want like a heavy story driven game. And a lot of heavy story driven games are actually very complex and have a lot of moving parts. And I think it would be easy to be like, oh, well, then you should check out Gloomhaven. But that's like not a great place to get new people into games. Yeah. So a lot of times I'll point people towards like newer, like kind of the bare essentials of board games still. But that being said, I also think like the Exit games are a really great jumping on point for people because they have a little story. They also have like the adventure games that are within the Exit franchise that have a little bit more story to them. Sometimes if they mention that they like D&D type stuff, I might point them towards some of the like solo experience type story games that are out there. There's one that I really love called Legacy of Dragonholt, which is this like story rich game that's got a very choose your own adventure. It's very light on mechanics. I point people to that, though I don't know if it's really that available anymore because I haven't looked it up recently to see if it's around.
I think it's still at Barnes & Noble. Last time I was there, I saw
Legacy Dragonholt. Yeah, I think that's like if I was going to recommend a story-based game to someone to like start with, that's usually where I start them because, like I said, it's got all those really cool mechanics of like you'll have a conversation and then it will have you mark an X on a page that's just like a grid. But then later on, you'll have to go and look, and if you've marked an X, it will like change the trajectory of your story. So it's very simple mechanics-wise, but it still gives you that choose your own adventure, my decisions matter feel. But a lot of times if people are just looking for like, oh, I just want to, I want to play a board game. Not to like brown nose or whatever it's called, but like we just played a bunch of games on Joko Cruise with a bunch of people that were completely new to board games. And so I took a lot of like trick taking games and things like that. And we also took charcuterie, right? Because that is I think things with like heavy theme that are very eye-catching, that don't take a lot of, they're light on mechanics, you can teach them in a minute or two, are very good for getting people excited about board games. Like when they can see it, when they can understand the concept like really quickly, and then just get into the fun, I think that's a really great way to hook people. So yeah.
Thank you.
Have you ever played Watson and Holmes?
I have played Watson and Holmes, and we played the Sherlock games as well. I think those are really good too, but they are definitely heavy on the reading side. And they're like really quite hard. I find like they're really difficult to like maybe not Watson and Holmes, but like the Sherlock games where you're like looking through the newspaper. And those are like really hard. So
Watson and Holmes is like very low on mechanisms. You just go to a place and read a card, right? But I always feel like I'm in that story. It's one of the ones I would probably do.
Yeah. Should I answer this question about Joko Cruise? So Joko Cruise was started by Jonathan Colton, who is a musician. I didn't really know a lot about him until we got invited on this cruise, but it is basically a nerd cruise. If you can imagine like a Comic-Con, but on the ocean for 7 days, it's sort of like that. There's like cosplay, and there's like different seminars, and there's like arts and crafts, and there's like various different nerdy themed dances. There was like a fancy pants parade where people put on their fanciest pair of pants and like had a parade. It's just like a very like inclusive, nerdy, fun community. And the difference for me is like it's all the best people at a Comic-Con. Like, you know how you go to Comic-Cons and sometimes there's just like a lot of really obnoxious like people that just like kind of ruin the fun a little bit. Oh, and you know what else it is? It's Comic-Con without the selling part of a Comic-Con. Because a lot of Comic-Cons really are just like, like an exhibitor floor with people just like lining up to get the newest thing, to get the Funko Pop, to get this, to all of that. And they're like loading up on stuff just so they can resell it. And like, that is kind of what Comic-Cons have become a little bit. But it's Comic-Con without the vendor floor. So you still have the panels, you still have the arts and crafts, the niche communities, all of that stuff, and the community building. But without this like, oh, we have to go and buy all this stuff and spend a bunch of money. I mean, you're spending money on the cruise, obviously, but it's really fun, and it's a really good community, and it's a really good group of people, and we had a great time. So
nice,
yeah,
cool, good. Yeah, it looked like you were having fun.
All right, so we move into our list.
Book when you were going down the hallway and you're reading the book and you're going back and forth because you're reading on a ship.
Yeah, the boat was this is my first time on a cruise. I've kind of avoided them because I'm a little scared of boats, but I will say the waters were fairly rocky the whole time we were on the cruise, with the exception of like day one, to the point that like one day almost everyone in our group was seasick because it was so rough. But for the most part, like 90% of the cruise, we had a really good time. So there was just a little bit of rockiness, but yeah.
Where was the cruise? Where did it go?
It went to the Bahamas, and then Puerto Rico, and then the St. Martin, which I think is Virgin Islands. Nice. It was those 3 locations, and then it looped back around and came back.
Nice. That's fun.
Yeah, it was good.
All right, cool. I could talk to you forever. So, and I know, I mean, we're already an hour in, and we haven't even talked about our topic.
We can talk about our top 5.
We should do that, I think.
So, top 5 books that...
Wait, all right, one more question. What's the map behind you?
Oh, okay. The map?
Yeah, what's that map?
Oh, what is the map behind me?
Earth?
Middle Earth. Yeah.
Middle Earth.
Okay. I thought I didn't want to... Okay,
yeah, cool. We try to change up our background like a little bit every year just to make it a little different. So this year we went with... Last year we had an anime poster back there. This year we're doing a Middle Earth poster, and who knows what we'll find for next year. So, yeah.
Cool. Good. Okay. Yeah. All right, I'll stop.
You don't know your Middle Earth geography?
I was gonna say, but I didn't want my nerd card revoked. But,
yeah.
I didn't have a clear shot of it. I thought the little thing on I think it's on this side. I guess if I'm backwards, that looked familiar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Over there somewhere.
Sure. Yeah, or it's over here. I forget. All right, cool.
Yeah.
So our top 5 books that should be board games. I guess, I imagine you probably read quite a bit more books than I do. I read every night, but I read slower. So I read maybe 3-4 books a year because I read so slow. But I talk about imposter syndrome kind of feel whenever I start putting this. I was like, I don't know. These are books I like.
You're still reading more than 99% of adults. So you're doing great.
Well... And then once you hear the books, you'll be like, okay, maybe pick better books. But because I've been lately reading lit RPG books. So
I like lit RPG books. There's a lit RPG series that almost made it onto my list for this. This list was very hard to make for me, by the way.
I have one.
A struggle.
I have one for it. Yeah.
I can't imagine it being easy.
Yeah.
All right. So you wanna lead us off then?
Me? Sure. Okay, but I have a number 6 because it's not fair for it to be on the list, and I'll explain why. So my number 6 is Discworld, the Discworld series, which if you're familiar with Discworld, it's this series that was written by Terry Pratchett. It is 41 or 42 books long. It might be 42 books. They're very funny. They're very funny, like classic fantasy. But there already exists a couple board games for them. Unfortunately, they're out of print. So if you want to get them, they're like $300 a piece on eBay, which is criminal. And the worst part is I've heard they're not even that great. So
Right.
I need new Discworld games that are good and accessible. So that is my number 6. It doesn't really count because they already have games, but they don't really because you can't get them and they're not even very good. So it doesn't count.
The better one is the Ankh Mork Pork. The Witches is you can pass on the Witches. It's okay. They could do a new edition of it, but I'm with you on that one. That's a good.
I have a cheater number 6 too that I didn't put on the list only because it was on my list for last episode for mythologies that should go there, which is the Iliad. Actually had a game design for a while, and I mentioned that last episode, but I was like, it was on my list last time, so I left it off of this one.
That's fair.
But that's a good pick. I feel like the Iliad or the Odyssey would be really good the Odyssey does kind of have some games that are like Cyclades is like is pretty tightly focused on the Odyssey, I feel like.
I think many of mine are cheats because I think I really picked all of these have like a series of books to them. So it's almost like the
most of mine are series too. So
okay. Good. We're all cheating together. Cool.
Yeah.
Books. We said
Eric,
books that should be board.
Eric pointed. There's something there I'm going to come back to in a second. I don't want to mention anything because it might be on somebody else's list. But
Scythe is a good one. I didn't think about Scythe.
Is it not on your list?
Scythe is not on my list.
Is it on yours, Chris?
No.
So in that game design course I was telling you about, one of the books that Keith has the students read through is the Scythe series.
Yeah.
And one of the groups of kids by the end of the course, they're supposed to make a board game. And one of the groups decided to make a board game in that world. And it's pretty good. Like they did a really good job with it.
Yeah, it's a really cool world.
Yeah, that's a great series.
Yeah. Okay, so do we want to do actual number 5 now?
Let's do it.
Yeah, actual number 5.
Okay. I'm starting.
Yeah. Do it.
Okay. So my number 5, I'm going to actually tell you only one of the books on my list is not a series. All the others are series. So my number 5 is a series called Legendborn. It is not finished yet. It is an ongoing young adult series. But I want it to be something. I want it to be a board game or a video game or something. I can't tell you what kind of board game. I don't know what would work. But this series is really cool because it takes place in modern day. And it focuses on basically all of the members of King Arthur's round table. They are throughout history reincarnating into people when they need to come back to basically like fight off demons. And Merlin's power is also reincarnating into young people, and then they're able to use that magic to basically protect the knights of this court. So we're in modern times, and we see these characters in this school, like these young adult characters who are being reincarnated with these Arthurian legends in them. And the main character, her name is Bree, and she kind of gets tangled up in all of this and finds out that she is a reincarnation of some sort. I'm going to be kind of vague because I don't want to spoil too many of the big plot things. But the interesting thing about Bree is that all of these characters in this story of Arthurian legends are like young, like white characters, and she is black, and her ancestry goes back along the lines of like slavery in the US and then all the way back to the UK. So she has magic from her like black side of her family in the US, which is more like root magic, and she has the Arthurian magic like kind of linked up inside of her, making her into something like extra special. It's just a really, really cool story, a really cool take on like Arthurian magic, but also just kind of the current, a current look at the world through the lens of this magic and through the lens of King Arthur and what King Arthur meant, or means in, the history of mythologies and things like that. It's a really cool series. Book 3 just came out, where it's going to be a 4-book series, but I would just love to see it turned into some kind of board game. I don't know what kind of board game. I don't know if it's a solo story-based game. I don't know if it's a game where you're like going on her journey, like maybe a cooperative game where you're all trying to like fight demons in some way. But that is a book series that I want to see more things made off of, whether it's a board game or a video game or both. So yeah.
And what's the name of it?
Legendborn is the name of the first book and the series.
Is that 2 words?
No, it's 1 word.
Okay. Because in the episode last week, one of my favorite mythologies is Arthurian legend.
Yeah, it's a really cool take on it. And it does just a really good job I think also just if you like stuff even like Buffy, like it has kind of that feel to it, like a young, like strong female character like taking on these demon monsters and like slowly getting stronger, and kind of the choices she has to make to like get stronger. And I know a lot of people don't like love triangles, but it's got a really good love triangle. Like I don't even like love triangles, and it's got a really good one to it. So there's that as well. So
cool. That's on my list.
Yeah. That sounds cool.
Yeah.
Is it coming to me or you?
You.
Me. All right. I do not again have any of these in order.
Good for you, Chris. Moving up in the world.
And so I'm going to pick one right now, just because Matt said it here, and it's He Who Fights with Monsters, which is a lit RPG.
Yeah.
I think 11 books are out by now, and they're still ongoing, and I pick them up the second they come out. I love the style of writing and all that stuff. It's like lit RPG. Person wakes up in a fantasy world. This one's fantasy, and it's magic and stuff like that. But that's the style of the magic and how it's explained and everything is so mechanical that you could put it into a game. A very interesting way, just like the Mistborn board game kind of uses the metals that that they use that system to make the game and stuff. You can easily kind of figure out a really cool game to do with this, and it's mostly about fighting monsters that appear and stuff and saving people and things like that. Well, there's a lot more to it, obviously, but that's the general world that he's in and stuff. And I've got a great monster fighting mechanism I'm looking to put into a game, and I was like, this would be perfect for it. And it was born from me like thinking of ideas for this this board game. I almost got the chance to make one for it actually, but the IP thing fell through. But so that was my that's my only lit RPG on here, I think, but it is one of my favorites. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
If you like lit RPGs, I always recommend Awaken Online is my favorite. If you haven't read it, it's essentially a story of a character who goes into a like online MMORPG that's like a virtual reality MMO that's like a newer thing, and it has this like AI system that is like reacting to your choices, and he ends up like basically becoming like the villain of that world through the choices he makes, and it's just really really good. Yeah, it's one of my favorite lit RPGs. So if you like lit RPGs, Awaken Online, highly recommend. It's really good. I'm
reading I think book 12 right now, almost finished with it actually, of The Wandering Inn. It's another
Wandering Inn's really good too.
It's amazing, but I couldn't think of how you would even begin to make that a board game, because it's just so many different people's stories and stuff.
So long. It's a Wandering Inn. I love Wandering Inn, but it's kind of like recommending One Piece to people. It's just like such a time sink, crazy long commitment.
Huge, it's just, and I didn't know what I was getting into. I was just, I'll read this one book, and now I'm book 12, and so. But
5,000 hours in.
I enjoy it. I love every character in it. It's great.
Yeah, it's really good.
But He Who Fights with Monsters. Yeah.
Nice. Me?
Yeah, you.
I have visual representation of all my books, which I normally don't do. Yeah.
Well, all my books are right here on my phone, so.
Perfect.
I could have done that, but I didn't.
I like feeling. I want the book in my hand. So this is not that these are in any order, but this one has been on my mind of an actual game to make out of this. I think it would be really fun. It's 100 Cupboards.
Oh,
you know that one?
I have not read it, but I've seen that cover.
It's the concept of it, like, late at night you're sleeping and all of a sudden you see this glow coming from behind one of the cupboards. And like every one of them is a portal, basically. So it's a fantasy adventure where you go through and there's a new world kind of thing. And it's really fun. There's 4 or 5 in the series. I'm not sure where it ended. But the concept of being able to have something where there's a main kind of like Final Girl, where you have that book that's all the components you need for the game, and then you have a couple books or a couple game boxes that are the different cupboards that you can jump into, and then kind of have an overarching story. Whereas Final Girl is the one story with the one character and the baddie. This one could kind of not legacy style, but something where there's an overarching feel to it. But I love the idea of like that Narnia thing where you go through the wardrobe and you're into a different world, but these are like connect them in some way. It's a really fun, it's a quick read. All of mine are quick reads. They're not too deep at all. But they're really fun, good character building, great author. But if you haven't started, grab 100 cupboards.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that.
It's a neat concept. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, scrapes off the plaster, discovers a door, 99 cupboards of all different sizes and shapes. Through one, he hears the sound of falling rain. Through another, he sees a glowing room with a man strolling back and forth. And you're like, every one of those could be a fun story to get into, but then you find out like there's just it's a good story. It's good stuff.
Oh, that's cool. I wrote that down. That sounds good.
Yeah.
Can they fit through the cupboard? Like enter it?
You have to read it.
Okay.
Wouldn't you like to know?
Yeah.
You'd have to read
I guess I would. Yep.
Yeah. I want to give you a little bit so you find the book.
Okay. All right. So number 4.
Okay, so my number 4. Now, this book isn't even like in my top favorite books of all time. I'm saying this needs to be a board game because whoever finally does it is going to make a lot of money. And because a lot of people are going to buy it. And it's crazy to me that it has not been made yet. I mean, I know why it hasn't been made yet. And I'm sure when I say the name, it'll be explanatory. But the Percy Jackson series, and I'm sure the reason it hasn't been made yet is because of Disney, and that license is challenging. And yeah, I feel like it is a gold mine, just waiting for someone to like get it right and do it and figure out the deal with Disney, because that series is just like begging for. I mean, it falls in the same realm of things like Harry Potter and Avatar: The Last Airbender and these popular franchises that are getting, and Lord of the Rings that are getting tons and tons of games put out. Yep. And yet there's not a Percy Jackson game yet. So Percy Jackson, I think, needs a game. I feel like it has to be cooperative, probably. If you're going to make like a big board game, it's probably got to be cooperative, or it's got to be something. If it were competitive, I think it'd be cool if you were actually playing as the different gods and like trying to control the different characters to get them to do what you want, kind of a thing. But yeah, it's Percy Jackson. Whoever gets there first is going to be very excited that they got there first.
So I'm actually, since it is on my list, it's the next one up on my list I was going to talk about. I'm going to jump just ahead so we can kind of piggyback off what was going on. I want the series. It's one of my favorites. It's probably my second favorite series that I've ever read. And I think that game becomes at least book 1. Or game number 1 is some sort of tower defense where you're protecting Camp Half-Blood, right? Yeah. And you got all the maybe your house is like damageable or something, and you're all coming together with the whatever to protect, and then you can call on Dionysus and you can call on whomever to come help you. That one, it's been on my mind forever. I had some students run through a trivia game of that because there are no Percy Jackson games, which is just fucking sad. But I'm right there with you. That series it's super fun. It needs to be done.
Yeah, for sure.
Very cool.
Have you read it, Chris?
I haven't read it. Of course, I've seen the movies and series and stuff like that. It seems interesting. I just haven't read it.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like one I would read, but
it's middle grade, so it's a very fast read. Like you can read through the first book really quickly, which is nice.
That's about where my intelligence level is anyway, if you look at what I'm going to project here. But
I read a lot of middle grade as well. And I think 2 of the series on my list, three of the books on my list are middle grade. So, yeah.
It is fun. And it's got that Greek mythology that we love. So it's easy to get into, and you can connect yourself to the mythology pretty easily. And then the characters and their god parents. And it's really cool. It's a great series. Yeah. He's a great author.
Well, I'll pick my number 4 to make you feel better about your picks, because what I wrote down is the Dr. Seuss series of books.
Oh,
because I want to make a board game that uses elements as if it's all one world, and uses like I want you to be like running a factory making Thneeds with the trees. I want you to run into the Who village and all this stuff. I want it to be all one big, and it could even be Euro, right? Like I want it to be all connected in a way, like maybe the Who's buy your Thneeds and all this stuff. and I want all of the cards and stuff. They have to rhyme and in that same like speak the way that Dr. Seuss. Like I want you to feel like you're in the Dr. Seuss universe, kind of thing.
Yeah,
and
I think even a board game with a Dr. Seuss theme, like art, would be really cool.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I want you to have to do stuff like put down a card that they've got kabootzels and they've got ootzels and they've got, and you put them together and they form a little tableau, but they rhyme together, you know, like it. Yeah. I think there's a way to do it that would make you just laugh every time you play your turn. And that's what I'd want to do is like get you into that kind of thing.
As long as you have green eggs and ham as a resource and you subtly imply that the green ham is really the Grinch that they ended up killing because they couldn't stand him anymore.
Oh my God.
That's the last roast piece.
Bonkers.
Things and Rings. Yeah, that's Peter C. Hayward's game, right? So yeah. In my mind, it's a big, giant Euro game because I want to get like into everything and stuff. But yeah, it does kind of have that feel, doesn't it? Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, and the Lorax could just be an ass in the game, like someone that's just causing shit.
Yeah, Lorax would be like an NPC that goes around like monitoring how many trees you've been cutting down to make your needs or whatever. Yeah,
that's cool. That's fun.
Yeah, I also want to say I hope it doesn't step on someone else, but I almost put this on my list, but he won't ever finish it. So if Patrick Rothfuss ever finishes this series, it'll be one of the best series ever written. But I don't think he will, so I'm not going to put it on my list.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. Which is too bad because he seems like a very nice guy. I've seen him in a lot of things. Yeah. So. All right, and was your number 4 the Lightning Thief as well, Mike? Or
yeah, I mean, I've only, contrary to other lists that I've done, I only have 5 on here. When looking at my bookshelf of stuff that I'd want to, like that you could port over to board games, there was no question about these 5. I don't even have. If we stopped on one, cool, let's collaborate on that idea. But I didn't feel like I needed to have more on this one because. I mean, these would be it. If you're like, Mike, what game would you make out of a book? It would be one of these. So we got a chance to talk about it, and I'll just talk about it with you.
Cool. Well, I threw out the Dr. Seuss, so we no longer have to feel bad about the level of intelligence in our book decisions here.
Perfect. Well done.
All right, so we'll go on to number 3.
Yep.
Okay, so my number 3 is an old book. But I only just read it for the first time last month. And I think it needs a board game. And I looked it up and I don't think it has one, which was very surprising to me, which is The Never-Ending Story. I know the Dark Crystal has a game because we own it. And I think the Labyrinth has a game, which we might also own. I don't think we played either of them, but they're on our shelf. They exist. But The Never-Ending Story, first of all, like the movie's fine. We watched the movie. I'd seen the movie when I was a kid, but not since. We watched the movie after I read the book. But the book is so incredibly special. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is where the movie ends is actually like the halfway point of the book. And the book goes on for like another 200 pages of just like more creative, like really interesting, wild things happening. But I think it just could make such a cool board game in some way. It's such a interesting, like full, complex world. And I know, like I said, I know they have the Dark Crystal one. I don't even know what that game is like, but I'm sure there's some form of every game I want is basically just a story driven tabletop role-playing game, not a role-playing game, but like Gloomhaven, but less complicated than Gloomhaven is basically what I want from all of these. So if you were to ask me about mechanics, that's what I want. I want like story driven games that are not insanely complicated to teach and play. But I think Never-Ending Story, it had like the story is just such a journey. There's so many interesting places you could put into that game. I would love to see it like come to life in tabletop in some way.
Would you include the thing that scarred so many children when watching that movie with the Treyu?
Yeah. If you roll a 1, your horse sinks into the mud, and that's fine. And that's your punishment for rolling bad.
Skip over that scene.
What's crazy is in the book, the horse can talk. So like the whole thing is in the swamp. The swamps are like like depressing. So like when you're there, it makes you depressed. And Atreyu can't feel it because he's wearing the necklace from the princess. But the horse is just like going on about how he's so depressed. And then when he's sinking, he's just like, I'm too sad to go on. And then he sinks. And you're like, it's like way more upsetting in the book than in the movie. Because in the movie, he's just like a horse sinking. It's like, yeah, that's sad. But we just met this horse. Like, we don't know this horse that well. But in the book, he's like going on about how sad he is. And you're like, that horse is seriously depressed. And then he sinks. And there's just no coming back from that.
That's interesting though. It's like your dice pool, you have like 4 dice, and if you ever at any point roll 4 1s, the horse is dead. Like that's just,
no matter what you're doing in the game, where you're at.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's Did you so Never Ending Story 2? I don't know if that's a continuation of like the second part of the book.
Supposedly, so some people in my comments told me that it does deal with some of the stuff from the second part of the book, but we haven't watched it yet. I think we're going to try and watch it. We're doing this like big deep dive on 80s fantasy right now, so we're trying to watch that at some point. But I think the next movie I want to check out is Krull, which I've never seen before. But like, so we're kind of like looking at a lot of like stuff like that, like 80s fantasy stuff. That is, I kind of want to watch some of the ones that are good, but I also want to watch some of the ones that are like bad or haven't aged very well, because I think that's also really fun. So we'll see.
Are you doing like a live reaction of watching that? Because that would
I found that with movies, I'm going to be doing a video like talking about Never Ending Story and like comparing it to the book. But I find that with movies, I actually prefer to do it more of like almost like a short video essay type thing, because the reaction content I think is fun for like TV episodes. But I think when movies, it's just too long and it just gets too garbled, and so I think it's better to like have like, this is my PowerPoint presentation today about this movie, and then when I do TV episodes, I break it down.
I've seen highly edited ones that do it real short, but I imagine that editing is just as long as the movie, obviously. So if not longer, it takes.
I mean, when I do reaction stuff on TikTok, it's usually between like 1 to 3 minutes, and I try to not let it go over 3 minutes. But for a movie, even, it gets really hard to do that because there's just so much to say throughout the entire thing.
Some good suggestions here. Legend, man.
Legend's still
awesome. Yeah, we want to watch Legend.
Tim
Dungeon
Curry,
Master, Dragon Slayer. Yeah, but we have a lot on our list. I think all of those are on our list actually. Awesome. Carl really wants to watch Time Bandits. Yes, because I've never seen that. So yeah,
I think that was on our list for films that should be board games actually. Yeah.
There was a Time Bandits TV show that like came out last year. Apparently, it already got canceled, but we haven't. It looked really. We watched a trailer, and I was like, "This looks really fun."
I know. Same thing. I wanted to watch it, and then I didn't get around to it, and it got canceled. I was like, now I don't want to watch it because I don't.
That's why it got canceled, because you didn't watch it.
Yeah,
fair enough. I think it's like on Apple or something, right?
It's an Apple TV or Amazon. I can't remember which one.
Yeah. Anyway. Oh, that's a good pick.
Yeah.
I never read the book.
It's really, really good. Highly recommend.
Nice. Okay, so what are we doing here? How do you do this when it's not in order? How do you pick?
It's great, right? It's great. You get to react to the people that are before you.
You know what? I'll do one that's an absolute cheat. So here's why it's a cheat. So I have Aaron and I, my partner, we have a game design that's 50% designed at this point, but and it's for putting 4 different books together. They're all Jules Verne books.
Okay.
So the idea is that you, the player, are one of the I forget what it's called, the committee that kind of starts off the 80 days around the world thing, how they're sitting around historical society or wherever they are. So you're like one of these members, but you start off all of the things at the same time. So you start off, hunting down Nemo in 20,000 Leagues. You start off Mysterious Island because those are actually connected. You do 80 days around the world. And you do Journey to the Center of the Earth. Mm-hmm. So on the board game, all of these things are kind of in the same world, and they're all doing different things. And I'm kind of like getting my expeditions to go further into each one of these while you're doing it. So maybe I'm further down in the volcano in the center of Earth while you're doing more Nemo stuff at the same time. So they're all connected in a way. Yeah. And
That's really cool.
the world is the world is the board, and so the 80 days around the world thing is, you have the little well, that's the weird thing. I always like to bring up this fact is that they never actually travel in an airship. I mean, a hot air balloon in 80 days around the world. But because it was in the first film, you see that picture on the covers of the books today, which is really weird. They talk about going on the hot air balloon, but they go, no, that's too new and weird, and they go on about their life. But now if you buy a book, it's got the hot air balloon on it because of the film. It's really weird. So
interesting.
So I wouldn't want to put the hot air balloon as the thing that goes around the world, but I don't know what I would do because they travel in all different ways. They even travel on an elephant at one point. So
yeah, so
Very
then you
cool.
meet that part of the travel experience, different ways
Yeah.
to get around.
Yeah, you could do different as you go to different parts. Yeah. But anyway,
That's cool.
I love that. That's awesome.
so it's a cheat because there are board games that are just like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, right? Or Journey to the Moon or something like that, or Mysterious Island, I'm sure. But none of them put them all together. So
yeah. Very cool.
That's a good idea. I like the concept. It's kind of like the Queen's Gambit with taking over episode 1, where it really feels like you got the space thing, the Gungan thing, and the Queen thing, and you have all these things happening at once. And how do you kind of make that all
yeah,
happen?
and you do a little bit of Reiner Knizia thing where it's like the one you do the least in is where most of your points come from. So you got to try to get them all up there at the same time. You can't just ignore your people in a volcano or whatever, let them get eaten by dinosaurs.
Yeah, and they'll be fine.
Feed the dinosaurs, it's fine.
Feed the people to the you hate feeding your people in games. Feed the people to the dinosaurs.
That's right.
Yeah, perfect.
So yeah.
All right.
That's number 3.
That's a good one, and you should make that happen because already in my head. I like the way the board looks and how the different tracks are going to run. Let's work on that. I'm sticking along for number 3 with Rick Riordan because I love him as an author, and he's got 2 other book series outside of Percy. So Percy is the Greek mythology, which is great, and I think there's enough in there that can be its own thing, either throughout or whatever. Hey, Peter. But he also has 2 other series. One is definitely Greek mythology as well, but it's kind of a sidestep. It's the Heroes of Olympus.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Right? And there's a whole book series there. That's still Greek mythology, but I think if you partnered, kind of like what the Adventurers did. I know Simon just said that they're redoing the Adventurer series, but they had the Temple of Gok and they had the Pyramid of Horus, right? With a different, like, not book series, but the different theme of the game. The other series that he's done is the Kane Chronicles, which is Egyptian. And I almost like this. I love Greek mythology, but reading this, it was too close to Percy. So I was like, okay, it's good, but it wasn't this. This was it was a switch in setting. It was a switch in thinking about how you're creating the setting while you're reading. And I think it'd be really fun to have some sort of crossover game, definitely cooperative narrative game within these worlds. And they're totally separate. But if you can get that concept of a main mechanism or main mechanisms at work, and then you port that into the different cultures, right? The different locations or whatever. I love him so much as an author. But there's so much in this one. There's just so much more fun things you can do with a game that this series represents, with like UV lighting and deck building or something that would be really fun in that series. So if you haven't, the Heroes of Olympus is great. It kind of continues the story. There's threads in there that'll feel familiar if you've come across the Percy Jackson stuff. But I think one that didn't, I don't know if it did as well or anywhere near as well, was the Kane Chronicles. Was such a good series to read. And I had so much fun stuff in this one.
I haven't heard of that one.
This is a good one.
Yeah.
So it's Egyptian, like it happens during, is it like fantasy Egyptian kind of thing? Yeah.
I mean, it's Egyptian. Like you know how you like with Percy Jackson, like when they're talking about the Minotaur, or they're talking about, you know, with the centaurs or whatever, like you have that knowledge of stuff. So it's still there. It's like Stargate, but not as fantastical as Stargate, where Anubis wasn't really Anubis. Right? It was just a dude with a giant fucking helmet on. But yeah, it's got that mythology in it, and then it's got that more modern feel with the characters and the adventure series kind of thing with it. And I think they'd be fun to put as a second series of games or something. So that would be my number 3. Yeah, Heroes of Olympus is good. Definitely Greek mythology. Definitely went right along with Percy Jackson. But then the Kane Chronicles, I think, it was different. It felt fresh at that point, right? You read 5 Percy Jackson books, then you're going through the Heroes of Olympus, and you're still with Greek mythology, and you're still dealing with that. But then you got this fresh kind of take on similar storylines, similar things that are going on. But it was just fresh at the time.
The modern times.
You have to read it, Chris.
That's a plot thing. You can say it happens in modern times.
I'm not giving. Does it sound interesting?
No, because it doesn't happen in modern times.
Maybe it happens in both.
Oh, there you go. All right. Now you spoiled it. I'm not going to read it.
Let's see the point. Now I know the whole plot.
Yeah.
There's a portal.
You said too much. Too much.
So the thing is, one of the covers in 100 Cupboards takes you to that storyline. That's not true. I'm lying.
I was like, oh, what a crossover.
Right? They knew that so back then. Yeah, so number 3, I would do both of those. It's still Rick Riordan, but separate than Percy Jackson. I think there's something different you can do with that. Maybe a one versus all, or not like it would. Percy Jackson would be a cooperative, and all these would be a cooperative. But I think there's some fun stuff that they represent or bring into the book that you can do in board games in a unique and different way that's not out there. So, also, it's a great series and fun read.
Nice. All right, so down to number 2.
Oh,
that's number 4.
That was number 3. Good job. So excited.
Okay, so my number 2. Somebody actually mentioned this in the chat earlier. This is the only book on my list that is like a fully adult book. It is a book called Gideon the Ninth, which is the first of a 4-book series. We're still waiting on the 4th book, which was supposed to come out last year, but it's gotten delayed a little bit, but I'm sure it'll be fine. But this is a series so the first book is about a character named Gideon, who is basically like a swordsman. This is like it's like a sci-fi space opera about necromancers in space. So we follow this swordswoman named Gideon, and she just wants to like leave her planet, retire. She's done, but she basically gets roped into helping her childhood nemesis, Harrow, who is a necromancer, because the like god of all the worlds has invited all the best necromancers to this one planet to go through a series of like tests of wit to find out who is going to be like the next like leading necromancer of like all of space. And each of them needs like a swordsman to basically like protect them as they go through these challenges, because, you know, necromancers are fairly squishy. They need someone to protect them as they do their magic and stuff like that. And it is just like really like dark and gritty. And it's one of those books. So every single one of the books in the series is something I love about them is that most of the book, you don't really understand what is going on. Like you don't understand the bigger picture of what is happening until like the last like 150 to 100 pages. And then when it all comes together, the payoff is just incredible. And it really like when it all comes together, and it all makes sense. You're just like, oh my God, like my mind is blown every single time. But they do require you to like really invest, because they're books where the whole time you'll be like, what the hell is happening? And then when it all comes together, the payoff is really great. But I think this could be like a Euro game where you're like going through these different challenges and trying to basically beat because there's lots of different characters. It has, I don't want to say it's like Hunger Games, but it has that vibe where it brings a bunch of people, these different necromancers, and they're called cavaliers. They're swordsmen together to like basically face off in these different challenges. So it could be a competitive style, maybe Euro type game, but it's very like dark and gothic and gritty, but also space and sci-fi. So it's just a really cool series of books. And there's, to this date, I've never really found anything quite like it. Like it's a very special, like series of books. That's just where I'm so excited for the final book to release, because I think it's going to be just so great to have that series fully complete. So yeah.
What was it? How do you spell it?
Gideon the Ninth. So Gideon is Gideon, and then the Ninth spelled out Ninth.
Nice.
There you go.
Necromancers in Space had me there.
It's
Squishy,
really cool series. Yeah. It's
Very
a really cool series. Yeah.
I don't know that one.
Okay, my number 2. I'll go ahead and say it. Anybody should have guessed it based on the name of our series, but it's The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. My fear is this has never survived into another medium before, as far as my opinion goes. You can't make a series, you can't make a movie about it that translates the kind of humor that Douglas Adams writes into these books, right? You read the books and you're laughing and crying and stuff, but anytime they try to put it on something else, it just doesn't translate well. And I don't know how you would translate that into a board game. Like, that seems like a challenge almost too hard to reach, but it's one that it'd be kind of interesting to really try. You'd have to really understand that humor, though, like dive into it and stuff like that. And you'd have to be nearly as creative if you're not just ripping off the stuff in it, right? But just the world and stuff like that is fun to be in. I mean, you could travel to the restaurant at the end of the universe and all that stuff. There's so much in there that you can enjoy. I'd love to have a board game that actually lets you be in that world. I just don't know if it could actually happen.
Just retheme Twilight Imperium.
Right. That's the same thing.
I feel like the first thing we'll get from Hitchhikers before we get a board game, I feel like we would get a tabletop role-playing game. Like, that's what I think. And that's kind of how I feel about Discworld, right? So like Discworld just got this big, refunding of a tabletop role-playing game that they're making. That's like a new tabletop role-playing game. And I'm kind of hoping that is like the first step towards more board games and things like that. I feel like that would be similar for Hitchhikers. Like, we would probably I feel like they would give us like the world to play in a tabletop role-playing game, and then they would start to do other stuff with the license.
So the problem, not the problem, but the difficulty with that in my mind is it's almost like Doctor Who RPG, right? You have to have a GM that can really run it to where you feel like you're in it. You'd have to have a GM that was just like on their game, or else it would just kind of fall apart in my mind. But yeah, I mean, if that could exist, that would be an awesome thing. I would love that. And yeah, I love putting a towel in a game. That'd be great. Yeah, we already put a towel in our last game. So. Tea towels.
Have the rules printed on a towel.
Yeah, so you have to carry it with you the whole time. You're like, wait, what's the rule?
Yeah,
that's actually hilarious.
That's the deluxe version.
That's the deluxe. Yeah. It's a big beach towel, double side printed.
Yeah. Comes with a little babble fish. You put it in your ear and it tells you the rules.
Right. That's funny. All right. My number 2 is another series by Jonathan Stroud. He's got other ones that are out there. This one I just love. It's not the main character, but it is the main character. It's the Bartimaeus trilogy.
Oh, I have not read these, but I always look at that cover and think that I probably would like them.
They're great. He's a gargoyle and he's a dick. Like, he's just an ass. And the thing that gets me, and I had never read this before. He's a 5,000-year-old djinn or jinni. And it says summoning Bartimaeus and controlling him are two different things. So the main character, it starts out as a revenge story. This kid gets bullied, and then he finds this. He starts working more on his magic, and he gets to summon. He finds out he can summon this ancient one. But he's just an asshole. So it's like full of sarcasm and full of just moments where you're like, I kind of like, that's me. Like, I could be that character. And I think in a game you have this ability to control, like to summon your pet or your creature or summon something, but you kind of can't control it. And I think it'd be fun because everything you do, like if you use a card, you know when to use it, right? And you know what it's going to do. And unlike when you roll a die for a success, like in Arkham, you can have you just fail and you're like, okay, fine. But like, what if you like the threat of rolling something could actually like just cause more chaos and you just don't know, but you need to do it because you need to have this thing happen. The series is great. The series, it's hysterical. I love Bartimaeus. He's a sarcastic asshole. If you haven't read it, read it. It's a good read. It's a little thicker than Riordan. But it's just fun. It's just fun. He's just fun.
I love that.
Yeah. I think there's 5. I think there's 5 in the series. I think that's when, and then he started doing Heroes and Monsters was the next series. I think that came after this, but being able to play around with a sarcastic djinn or a sarcastic gargoyle, like it would be fun. So
Speaking of summoning things you can't control, I see a cat.
Yeah, he's been like on and off my lap the entire time we've been recording because he's a very needy creature. So this is adorable. Graham. He's like the whole time we've been recording, he'll like get on my lap and then he'll get off my lap and then he'll get on my he's just wants attention no matter what. So
what's his name?
Just like Bram. Yeah.
Like Stroker?
No, everybody has it. It's Bram, and then our other cat Simon are named after a young adult book called Simon versus the Homo sapien Agenda. They made a movie out of it called Love, Simon. So the 2 characters in that are Bram and Simon. So those are our 2 cats. So nice. But Simon like sits off on his own. He's kind of a loner, but Bram like wants to be on my lap at all times. So that's where he has been most of the time we've been recording.
I didn't know if you could hear it, but my cat was trying to like get through my door yelling at me.
Yeah, if we had them in the other room, they'd be like slamming on the door. So this is better, at least noise wise, to just have them out here and like quietly stalking around.
Cool. All right, so we're down to our number 1. Let me actually hit a 1. There we go. 1. Sort of. The banner covers it, but whatever.
So someone in the comments also mentioned my number 1, and I was gonna say like, oh, don't spoil the ending. But my number 1 would be Redwall by Brian Jacques. So Critters Going on Adventures is my favorite theme in all of anything. So I'm very excited for the book that you guys are putting out because it is Critters Going on Adventures, and that's like very much my favorite theme. And we have what's the one from Plaid Hat?
Mice and Mystics.
Mice and Mystics, right? We have Mice and Mystics. That's fine, but I want like an actual Redwall game, and it can even be the same mechanics of Mice and Mystics. It can be that kind of game, like Wandering Galaxy, like those type of games. I think it would be great as like to go through the different stories. There are like 22 books, so there's plenty of material. You can play as all the different animals. But I just really want like an official Redwall board game. There are a couple of official Redwall video games. None of them are very good. So those people don't need to be involved in making the board game. But I shouldn't say that. I've heard that one of them is actually like not bad. It's like more of like a choose your own adventure style game. But I just really want like miniatures, like the whole works. I want like I want primal level production, but for Redwall. That's what I want. I want someone to make Agamonia for Redwall.
You had made when you were going through your magic and you were going through that set with all the creatures. I forget what the name of the magic set was.
Yeah, Bloomborough.
Yeah, I think you had mentioned something about Redwall through one or a couple of those too, and they're pretty spot on.
Yeah, I bought a bunch of those. I still have to this day not played Magic, but I bought those cards because I love Critters Going on Adventures so much. So I would love to see. And I mean, look at how well that sold. Like, there's such an audience for it. I don't know. I don't know what it's like working with the estate for Brian Jacques of like getting I would assume it's not super easy to get the license for that because I feel like more people would have the license for it if it was. Right. But I would love to see more. And if they can't get the license to that, there's a graphic novel series called Mouse Guard, which is incredible. And there's a tabletop role-playing game that's based on the Burning Wheel that is incredible. And I would love to see maybe a board game come out of that as well. Would be really cool. That's my second choice if I can't have Redwall.
Nice.
Yeah, Redwall's a good one. Yeah. Good.
Very cool. So my number 1 is, I'm trying to remember okay. So it's called the Tautos series. It's by Stephen Brust, and it's fantasy. There's 17 books out of a 19 book series, And he just had one come out last year. He's pretty regular about it. I think the one before that was the year 2023. So I haven't read the latest one, but 16 books are amazing. I'm sure the 17th is as well. In the world, there's basically like 16 different like types of elves or something, and there's humans, of course. And the main character is a human who lives among these elves, and he's a assassin, but it's not what you think when you think you're assassin. Like, he's actually a good guy, and there's a guild for it and all this stuff, and it's like, oh yeah, well, they hired us, like, it's almost legal, like it's mostly almost legal in a way. It's really weird. And he gets into, like, if you were to read these things chronologically, you read his whole almost life story, but the writer writes out of chronological form. He pulls a George Lucas and just starts at episode 4 or whatever. And then, so you can read them in chronological form. There's a list of what to do. But if you read them in the form that they come out, he writes them so that you can come in any book and enjoy the story as a whole.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
It's
so
very
like
Discworld, which is awesome. I love that.
So I read like the first book that came out in public. I read it in publication order or whatever, and I was like, okay, cool. He's talking about like his wife and she's a character and stuff like that. And then the next book, he's not even married. And then I'm like, oh, what happened to the wife? Or is this before? Oh, okay, it's before, you know. And then the next one, and I didn't even realize it was the case until I got to the second book. But the stories always feel this kind of like he gets himself into this situation, maybe it's not even his fault, but he's in this situation. You're like, how the hell is he going to get out of it? And then they pull this whole, it feels like heist movies where like, you're like, oh, and then this happens and he does this and stuff. And it's this great reveal and feel about it and stuff. And it always makes sense. It never feels like it's just pulled out of nowhere. Like you're like, oh, that's why he did this one thing when he was over here. Like it's always a great feeling at the end of these books. The style is really kind of loose and personal, and he changes it up in some books. Sometimes he's like, I'm going to write it from the point of view of this side character and stuff like that. So it's always interesting. You're not stuck in the same kind of writing style. So
did you say, so you said the newest one was 17 and it's a 19 book series?
Yeah. So you've only got 2 books left. It's rhetorical, but what makes you want to write a 19 book series? Like, he's got other books too. I think he's got, I want to say 5 in another series, and he's written a few other books that are in that same world, but not officially part of the series because it's not that character.
Right. But like, you know, a lot of
he writes a very specific number, 19.
Yeah, a lot of them have a 5, right? Harry Potter 7.
So
like
I think it's because it might be 16 or 17 different houses are in the elf thing, and they all have their own special feel. Like, the Jerrigs are these kind of people. The forget the Lyruns are kind of like this. So every book is titled off of those houses, and it has the style. The story is stylized around running into people in that house and dealing with that. So you get a really good feel for the universe and all that stuff. And it's just got, and it's high fantasy. There's floating castles and clouds and all kinds of cool stuff. But he's got none of that. He's just some dude who's like really good with knives. So he has to deal with people at that level, and he has to come up with really cool ways of getting around it.
What did you say the series was called?
Taltos. So it's Taltos, and it's by Stephen Brust. Brust. He's an interesting author too. I've seen him. I saw him at a convention. Went to one of his talks and stuff. That was the first time I ever heard someone use the term conciseism. As like he was talking about how he writes and he does a concise thing where he goes through everything he writes and like tries to take out as many words as he can without losing anything. And I also heard Patrick Rothfuss use that same term too. And I feel like that's probably my favorite kind of writing style. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it sounds cool. I just 17 or 19 books. Like, that's it. I'm done. I'm doing a 19 book series. Did you know that from the beginning?
But he's already kind of cheated a bit where he's like started stories for side characters out of that. Or even he started 2 books out of a that happens 500 years before all this, just because it was mentioned as a story in one of the things. And he's like, oh, I'm going to write that. And in that one, he wanted to do something weird. So he wrote it in the Alexander Dumas kind of like Three Musketeer thing, where it's very wordy. Like he went against his own kind of style and stuff. So I didn't like those as much because of that style, but I like the ideas. I just didn't like the style of writing. But
interesting.
Yeah, it's very good service.
Very cool.
Sounds good. All right, mine.
Yes.
All right. This is my favorite series of all time, and it's a little bit of a cheat because this is my dream IP. If I could make a game in this, or finish making the game in this, this would be it. Like Batman animated with Richard was coming in with it is super cool, and I don't think it would ever get better. And this might be at least parallel to having that experience. Hey Andrew.
Hey Andrew.
This is I have multiple copies of this series because I read that. I don't know if it translates. Like
I've never read this, but I bought the first book. You're saying I should read this.
Brandon Mull, he's got The Beyonders, he's got Dragon Watch, he's got Candy Shop Wars, he's got a bunch of series that I just love his style. I love Rick Riordan. I like Brandon's better. And this series, like I have my first edition hardcover that I don't necessarily take. Like no one can read it.
I can't read it because you keep moving it around so bad. What is it?
Fablehaven. I thought you saw it.
Fablehaven. Okay. Well, it's shiny too. So I saw a Fable, and you're just like, see this book right here? Here it is. It's a great book.
Can't you read it? You can't read it?
Yeah.
You know what this is? So yeah, Brandon Mull's Fablehaven. I was in Barnes and Noble shopping one day, and I saw this, and I know you shouldn't like the covers of books. They're there to get you. But like I saw that witch, and I was immediately hooked. And then when you flipped it over, it was like
it was love at first sight. You saw her, and you're like, she's the one.
I was done. As soon as I started reading this, I didn't put it down. Like that, it drew me into the world. Think Spiderwick, but better.
Oh.
And the siblings are like they find out that there's this fantastical world around them that exists similar to Spiderwick. And then there's this witch, and if you look, there's this rope that's got her attached to this stump, and there's knots, and you can ask her, every time you ask her for a favor, a knot gets undone. Like that's the trade-off, and you find out you might not want her to get, like she's in there for a reason, like you don't want to let her out. But the series just takes off. Like book 1 hooks you, and then he just like you're done for the next 5 books. And I would love to have a Gloomhaven-esque type of game that's more introductory than absolute bonkers, but like with the unlockables and the way the dual use cards work, something that grand of a nature in this series. I know it wouldn't work. Like I wouldn't work for like getting people into board games. Like the people that read this probably aren't going to be able to play those levels of games, so something would have to give, but it would be unbelievable to be able to play in that world. It's so great. There's so many little things that you can do that you can, like reading it as a game designer, you'd be like, oh shit, that would be really cool to do in this. Like actually having a rope that has knots, and every time you do the thing, you have to undo a knot. Like it gives you that stress level in the game. It's such a fantastic world that he built with all the things that are happening throughout the series. It's awesome. If you haven't read it, it's my favorite series of all time.
I definitely feel like you could make something Gloomhaven-esque. Like there are definitely companies in the past couple of years who have done stuff like that is more accessible to a family level, right? Like, especially like the one that first comes to mind, but it is a deck builder, is like the Op, and they did it with the Harry Potter battle. I can't remember what the full name of that game is, but they recently also did it with that new Avatar game, which is a deck builder where you're unlocking things as you go and like introducing elements to the game as you go. I think that is a really great, like that seems very accessible. It's really good. And even like for a bigger, grander thing, Renegade released that Serpent Valley. What is it called? Something of Serpent Valley. It's like a big box, like adventure story based game, but it is very accessible to like newer players. It's all about just like you're just starting the barrier of entry lower, and just like here are basic mechanics of how you move your character. Even Incredible Dreams, Kinfire Chronicles does a really good job of like open the box, start playing. We'll teach you step by step as you go. Okay, this is how you move your character. This is how you do a turn of a battle. Okay, now you've done your first battle. Here's what it's like to go to town, right? And it's super accessible, even though it still has that big box feel of like a Gloomhaven game. So I think that's very possible.
Yeah, Chronicles was good. I was taught that. I played it once, so I don't like the setup and the learning experience wasn't mine. The play was good. But yeah, the you mentioned the Harry Potter deck builder. That was Andrew. That's Andrew Wolf, who's there now. That was his from the
and it's super accessible, and it's very family friendly. But it still does a good job of like introducing things. So by like game 3 or 4, you're no longer playing what feels like a super like light family game. Like it escalates at like just the right level that you start really simple, and then you get people into it so that it feels a little crunchier for like, more like gamers.
Yeah. I think it would be ripe for it. But if I don't, there's so many, and I wouldn't want it to get lost in a field of other games like that. It would have to, there's so much other stuff you can do that would make it stand out. And in my head, it all works out perfectly. It's the most brilliant game ever.
Always.
But the series, it's such a fun, once you start reading it and you get into the world and the thing happens, and then all of a sudden there's like that dark element of it where you're like, well, yeah, no, we trust her. Like, she probably shouldn't. Yeah, but I don't trust you for saying that I shouldn't trust her. Like, he does such a great job of bringing you into this world and having you take the journey along with the brother and sister. It's fantastic. It's my favorite. It's my like the Arkham for board games. Like Arkham is my number one board game because of reasons. This is my number one read. I adore it, and it's still fun to read. Like you still pick up new things when you read through it. It's fantastic. So I love that. Couldn't recommend it enough.
Oh, nice.
Even like stuff like Stuffed Fables, right? Like stuff like that is kind of has that feel of a Gloomhaven game, but on a lighter, like that a family could play together. So
yeah. Well, even like Near and Far, or like any of Ryan Loftus things that brings you into like great world building, and then really easy game, not easy, but easy to pick up gameplay. And then not a hold hand nature like Oath, where you're on a rail and they take you through like, this is how you play these cards and this is how you do. I just played Myth for the first time over the weekend, and the introductory, like,
I've heard it's a lot.
Oh God, Myth is awful. I was not.
The whole thing with that game, and because that was like a big thing with Kickstarter when it happened too, right? That happened right as we were getting into board games, and I remember seeing that game, and I was like, "This looks so cool. This is so fan." Because that was pre Gloomhaven, and I was like, "This looks like something I want to play." And then I started reading about it, and I was like, "I don't know. I don't know if I can handle this. It sounds like a lot."
Brutal. Yeah, we played with the newer rules and the updated stuff, and the problem is like when we played the new Descent. The way they use the app integration, and you click and drag who's going, and you click and drag.
Yeah.
We went back and played for the first time Star Wars Imperial Assault, which
it's so good with the app.
Right, but
I haven't played with an app.
The app is good. I prefer Mansions of Madness with the one versus all, and I think I prefer Imperial Assault with the one like run the Empire and everyone else is doing their thing. When we played the app for Descent, it was so intuitive and so fresh and so new. We went back to Imperial Assault, which technically is 2 iterations behind because Journeys, the Lord of the Rings, was in between.
Yeah.
It felt so bad that I never wanted to play it again. So like this Myth thing, Gloomhaven has done such a good job, or a lot of modern games have done such a good job with the card play and the deck building, or the draw and play and what's readied and what's in your hand. And they do such a good job with it now that this game just felt like, what do we do? Why are we doing it? Was really hard. But yeah, this would be like, I would actually be nervous with this because I love that series. So it's so good that there's Arkham and Fablehaven that's my book and my games. Like there's nothing better for me.
Oh, I love that.
I really like this nomination, I guess, or this idea.
Lock and Key is
That'd
really
be
good.
really good. I feel like Matt is my book brother because everything he's throwing out here is Dresden Files would be really fun.
There's a game. That's a deck builder, and they have different chapters.
Oh, is there? Oh,
and
okay.
it's like not bad. It's
No,
not
it's
the best deck builder I've ever played, but it's like fun.
It's good.
Huh.
It's there. It's just like the Reckoners is for me. With like usually the problem is with this kind of this conversation and like how cool would it be to have a thing is a lot of games that are made off of IPs suck. They're just not good, right? Cash Cabs or whatever. The Reckoners did such a great job, and I don't know the IP as well. I
do know the IP really well, and I think they did a really good job.
Oh, it's so smart. And Lock and Key IDW, which is IDW, they have a card game version of it, and I love the key what they do with the keys, and they keep it more connected to the graphic novel, right? Like the art on the cards and everything. Like it's got good bones, but it was IDW, and that it just killed it.
Yeah, we did mention the name of the win. It wasn't in a list. I said I'd like the series to be done before I do that. Although there's not really something in that storyline that I think would make, like in my head, triggers like, oh, you could do this with a game and stuff. And that's a lot of what I built my list on.
Yeah.
I was also going to put Stormlight Archives on mine, but I feel like we'll probably have a board game soon because look at how well that RPG did, and they also put out Mistborn, which was excellent. So I just expect in the next couple of by next year we'll have a Stormlight Archives board game. I imagine it doesn't need my help getting there.
Have you we've been talking about books to board games? There are some not podcasts but like audio things that aren't books. Have you the Magnus Protocols? Have you listened to those?
I haven't. I think I tried to listen to them at one point. I can't remember if it was Magnus Protocols or something else, but I think it was Magnus Protocols. And if it's not, I apologize. But at one point I went to listen to it, but I have to do things in order. So I have to start from like episode 1. And it was so confusing where to start and where the actual beginning was, because when you went back, like the first like 5 or 6 episodes were like advertisements or something weird, and like they put episodes retroactively at the beginning that weren't supposed to be at the beginning, and I got so confused that I was like, I'll come back to this later, and then I never came back to it. So I'll come back to it at some point because I know people love Magnus Protocols, but I think they're making something.
That was my point. They have that and the Night Vale. They both have RPGs now, or like Hunt to Killer kind of mystery box kind of stuff to it. So it's interesting that even that's now getting picked up as an IP to make some sort of tabletop experience out of.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like IP games are a lot of them are I feel like there's the scale is tipping where more and more I'm playing IP games that I actually think are pretty good. I think the ones I'm playing that I don't think are very good are actually becoming less and less. Like because we like playing a lot of IP games because we like a lot of IPs, and I feel like in the video game realm, they're just pretty much almost always terrible. But in the board games, I'm actually surprised when we play one that I think is not that great now, because I feel like we played so many that are actually really good that it seems it's almost like a shock to the system when we play one that I'm like, oh, actually, I thought this was not very good.
And it's so different from like 10, 15 years ago where an IP was they were just compared to today's kind of games. And I think that kudos to the publishers that are treating that well. Because they do care about the stuff, and they know that like shit's not going to fly anymore. Like they need to be somewhat good, not just a cash grab and not just garbage. Like the games that are coming out are solid, not like the Lord of the Rings games that they had out like 20 years ago.
Battle for Middle Earth, the one with the app, is like really good. That's a very fun game, and even like Lord of the Rings trick taking game is excellent. Like that's awesome, and like the Duel for Middle Earth is really good too. So.
Well, even the WizKids dice game that they started with the whole Dice Masters thing. Like there's I don't know if it's a 2-player, but they had a Dice Master version of Lord of the Rings that was just, it was awesome.
Yeah.
Obviously Dune.
Yeah, Dune.
Yeah, Dune has a bunch of really good games out as well.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's different now with the IPs. Then when you think about IP games, you think of like a Monopoly something edition. And now it's like they're actually really good games out there now. So it wouldn't be hard to get. I mean, some of these probably difficult to get for an IP to make a board game out of, but I think they'd be treated really well nowadays.
I mean, we even played like the Smurfs game recently from Maestro, and even that was like pretty fun. Like I was shocked. I was like, there's no way this is going to be enjoyable, but I think Isaac Vega was involved in. I think was it? No.
I know Gilmore wasn't. John Gilmore.
Oh yeah, maybe Jonathan Gilmore. Yeah.
Oh right.
Yeah, Jonathan Gilmore.
But yeah, there's something about making the Smurf hut, right? Like when you get the resources together and you flip that thing over, and now you have that mushroom on the board. Like it's really
John Gilmore, thank you. Yeah, like that was really good. We also just recently got the I played it when it was in its like prototype form. But even like the Hello Kitty game is surprisingly like very Carcassonne-y, very fun. Like stuff that you would think would not be very good as a board game is like coming out and being given actual good treatment by like good designers, and they're making really cool things out of it, which is cool.
I would probably attribute that to that as being that we have a lot more good designers in this industry. And you can, it used to be like, oh, we just got this IP and we need to make something in 3 months. Slap it on Monopoly or whatever you got. Just put it on something and get out as quickly as possible. And now probably, I'm guessing, our contracts are a little more realistic whenever you do that for most part. And then we're also being like, hey, I know like 15 great designers that probably got something on the shelf that fits this. Let me contact them. And, so industry gets bigger. You got a lot more talented people to call on. So,
I don't know if you're familiar with Erica Boyoris over at Spin Master, but you have games like the Godfather game that came out through Spin Master, and you have the Wednesday game that came out, and they're not heavy by any means, but they're treating an IP well, right? They're making sure that the fans are getting something cool. But if you are picking it up because you're at Target and you like the IP and you are a gamer, there's stuff there that's actually fun because you have people that are gamers that are making these things, not just people that are this will sell, redo Uno and make it this like that. It's not going to fly anymore. So you have, like, to your point, Chris, you have people that are like, they're treating it well. They're good at what they do, and they're treating it well.
Yeah, what a great way to introduce people into the board game. Maybe you never played a board game. You're like, I really love Wednesday, though. And then you're like, what kind of board game is this? And then find out there's a whole world out there to discover. So,
Yeah. Cool. And I think an accessible theme is like the easiest way to get people that aren't into board games excited about board games, right? Like if they have an idea of what they're getting into, like nothing is more exciting than like putting something on the table that they instantly connect with before they've even learned a single rule. They connect with it. And like, again, not to brown nose, but that's something I love about charcuterie. Like you put that on the table and people are excited, right? Like when I put that on the table for friends who at Joko Cruise was their first time playing board games, I was slowly introducing them to stuff throughout the week. And I put out those things and I put the little food things in the middle of the table and their eyes light up because they get it, right? Like they just instantly get it without needing to know anything else. Oh, we're making a charcuterie board. I get it, right? And I think when you have that kind of moment where people just instantly get it without needing to know anything else, and that happens a lot from IPs, right? Like when you put out an IP, they recognize their eyes glisten. Like you put out something Avatar, The Last Airbender, for people who like Avatar, The Last Airbender, they're, oh my God, what are we doing? What's going to happen now? They get really excited. And so it's a great way to get people invested. And the better those games are, the more likely they are to pick up another one in the future.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also as an ambassador in the hobby, you're speaking for a lot of the games as well. So for you to take that game and put it out there and for you to curate that experience for them, now not only does the game speak, but you're speaking, and then they're walking away from that wanting to learn more. So like there's more than just the game. Like it does involve, like we've talked about on the show where Chris has had horrible experiences with people that are teaching him games and he'll never play it again. And he won't seek it out. And
a bad first experience is terrible with a game. Yeah.
Yep.
It's just me. And it's not to teach.
No. And people and there is a skill to teaching games, right? Like and there not only is there a skill to teaching games, but I think there's a skill to teaching games to people that are not gamers because we have our lingo. And like last week on the cruise, I guess 2 weeks ago, I multiple times had to explain like what a trick taking game is, right? Like and when was the last time you had to sit down and explain to someone like this is what a trick is. This is what is considered leading the trick. This is a suit. Like you have to make sure you get that groundwork in or they're just not going to have fun. And then like, what's the point?
Yeah.
When I used to, well, I guess used to, I still will. But when I demo at Gen Con, it's so much easier because almost every single person that comes up there it kind of knows the lingos and stuff. But I still, whenever I introduce, I go, this is a worker placement game where you do this and this. I explain worker placement right after, but I look for the nod of like, okay, I know it, so I don't have to go into it. But sometimes I see the, like, I don't know that term, so I continue the explanation. Like, so yeah, it's you have to gauge each time and stuff. But yeah.
That's what we did when Mission Control hit and we were at Gen Con, and the way we would teach it was this is an asymmetric, cooperative, real-time roll and write. And or when you say something like orthogonally adjacent, when you're teaching a game and you use the word orthogonal and they're like active listening with you, you're like, okay, I know what level I'm doing. But when you say orthogonal and you see them just want to shoot themselves, like, okay, well, now I know I need to step back. Right? Because you can say adjacent, people know adjacent, but when you say orthogonal, that's a really good tell of like, what kind of gamer are you? Or if you use asymmetric and people are like, what in the hell did you just call me? Then you know what you're dealing with at that point. But it is teaching is a skill. Teaching game teaching is a skill. Reading a rule book is a skill, and being able to translate that into a table teach, like that's. But to be an ambassador in the industry and to do the things right, like you are the front line of like people now wanting to seek more into the hobby. And
I think making TikToks about board games has ultimately made me a better teacher, because it has made me, I am very, very aware that probably 75% of my audience, when they're watching a video, if not more, when they're watching a video about me talking about a board game, they either have not played a board game before, or they will not know any of the terms that I'm speaking if I start to go into board game lingo. And I think having that in the back of my mind and being able to explain games in around 60 seconds in that mindset has ultimately made me a better teacher today than I was 3 years ago before I was like doing a ton of board game content, because it's such a different level of like, how do I express the fun that you're going to get out of this game in as fast as possible, so that you know the promise of what we're doing here, and now we can work towards getting you to that point of like having that experience. So because
you take a lot for granted, even when you're teaching, like even if you're teaching your own game or teaching a game you love, you take a lot of things for granted because you know it, so everyone else should know it. And they don't even know what orthogonal means. Like Daryl's using it in everyday conversation. Good for you.
It's one of my favorite games in the world is Forest Shuffle, and I swear every time I teach it, the teach involves like the first 3 rounds of the game, me going, oh, and one more thing, because in my head, I just have the whole game, and every card memorized.
Right.
But then I have to be like, oh, right. And the game ends when these winter cards come, because I'll forget little things that are like obvious because I played it so many times. It's actually easier for me to teach a game that I'm newer to than a game that I know really, really well. Because if I'm teaching a game that I know really, really well, I'm going to forget to explain things that are like the simplest basic parts of the game, because in my head they're just like lodged in there, like everyone should know that part.
It happens to the best. I went down to Tantrum Con and we did the tournameal, and we used charcuterie as the tournameal, and I was teaching the game, like I was running it on the microphone, teaching the room, and a table to the left of me, like it almost felt there was only 4 people at the table, and it felt like they were rushing. They had the rule book out and they were already starting to like divvy up and teach while I'm trying to give we're all going to take the first turn together. So I explained it really quickly and I got them up and going. And then it was, 20 minutes later, half an hour later, where I'm walking around and people are asking me about scoring, and I'm going to their table. I'm like, you guys are scoring? Like, yeah. Like, you only have 12 chips on your board. Oh, fuck. I forgot the rule where you start with chips. But in my head, I thought they all knew it because 6-5 and 6-player game, you start with tiles on your board. But I was rushed through it, and I totally forgot a major rule of the game till the end, and everyone laughed at me, and it was hysterical. But sometimes you do forget some shit, and then it seems like, oh, Jaysen was just cheating the whole time. He didn't want to tell us how end game scoring, and you just
like, oh yeah, exactly.
Probably one of the worst teaches I've ever had. Which is funny because this person was a content provider. I won't say who they were, but and Peter Vaughn and I, who's in the chat, were sitting at a convention and we opened up Caverna. And I had played before, but it had been like maybe 2 years. Yeah. And so I was like, I don't quite remember how this goes. And this person came along and said, oh, hey, I don't have time to play, but I could teach you, which is awesome at a convention, right? Yeah. So you're like, okay, cool. And they sit down. And they just start. I can't even emulate how chaotic it was. None of the rules matched to anything else. And we listened to the whole thing, and they got up and we said, "Oh, thanks for teaching," and stuff. And they left. And Peter and I just looked at each other and went, "I have no idea. I'm even more confused." And it was like a 20-minute teach at least. And we were just like, let's put it up. And we just put the game up and left.
That was it.
That's a hard game to teach.
Yeah, I mean, I always, whenever I try to teach, I start with a structure in my head. And it almost never fails if you start with, here's the theme, here's the quick overview, here's how you win, here's how you get to winning.
Yeah.
Right? So you remember, you know who I'm talking about, don't you? He blocked it out. But I always start with that structure. But if you don't have any type of structure like that, and you just start going, this is a card that does this, this, and this. Oh, I love these resources. This is like, that's how it was. It was just like,
I'm going to teach games like that from now on.
yeah,
all my videos from now on are just going to be me selecting random pieces, explaining what I love about them, nothing about the game. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
How not to teach board games.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were very nice. Anytime someone is just like, "Hey, let me teach you this game just because I love this game," very appreciated, right? But I thought that was funny.
That's great. Well, I mean, it's 2:20. I know it's been a while, but Jaysen, thank you for doing this again.
Thank you
for weeks. I'm really glad we got to find a time to do this. Let's not make it so long till the next time you're on as well.
Yeah.
And I'll see you guys in soon.
Yeah.
In April.
In kind of my backyard, actually.
Yeah. Next time you come back, we could reverse it and say board games that should be books.
Oh, yeah, I like that too.
That's harder. Because you got that's harder.
No, that's
interesting.
I feel like that's easier. There's a lot of board games I want books
for. But you got to pitch what the story is. How about that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that.
That could be fun. Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
In a land where there are azules. Anyway.
Top 5 monopolies that should be books.
No. A lot of them are, actually.
I guess, technically.
Yeah.
Yes, Peter. Forest Shuffle in April for sure.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Absolutely. I'll probably... Do people bring games, like older games to this, or is it...
No, they do. Yeah, there's piles of games that people bring and they leave them. We're talking about a convention and we're going to it in April. But yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'll bring Forest Shuffle with me because I usually just have it.
Nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you're flying. So if there's anything you want to play, just shoot me a message and I'm driving, so I can just bring.
Yeah, we won't bring too much because we're flying, and I think. Cool. I think we're flying Southwest, but didn't Southwest just change the rules to where now you can't bring a bunch of like 20 billion suitcases anymore?
Oh, really?
I think so. I have to look because there was like a whole kerfuffle. I don't know if it started officially yet, but it's supposed to soon. And that's always been our like Gen Con go-to is we fly Southwest so we can like each have 2 free suitcases. Right. And now that's not. I'm not going to be able to get away with that anymore, sadly.
I don't bring anything because I never get a direct flight to it. I always have to take 2 planes back and forth, so 4 plane total. I'm not going to be bringing a lot of luggage and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's hard.
But yeah, if you could bring Path of Light and Shadow, if you have it, Mike.
That already.
I want to play that with John.
Iridia's coming with me. Path of Light and Shadow is coming with me.
I just got Iridia. Oh wait, is Iridia the one I just got? Iridia is the story-based one, right?
Yes, and it's very good.
I haven't played it yet. What is the one? I also am thinking about checking out the other one that's has a similar name, but it's a 4X game. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
It has a name. Aldera, I think, is what it's called.
Oh, I've seen pictures of it. I don't have that one.
Yeah, it's like
is that out already?
Yeah, it just recently came out, I think. So I want to check that one out too. But I want to try out Iridia first. But we got it. I did an unboxing for it, and now it's just sitting over there until.
I'll play it. I'll play it. The problem with it is that it's a continuation story, right?
Yeah.
So, and the first story is a walkthrough that teaches you the rules, and it's I hate walkthroughs. So
Chris loves it. It's one of Chris's favorite things from 2024.
I hated it. I almost didn't want to play the game after doing it because I hate walkthroughs. This is my own personal thing. Other people love them. That's fine.
So I like walkthroughs, so maybe I'll like that.
Sure. I hope you do, because the second game I played where you're free to do whatever you want, awesome.
Oh, cool.
I mean, I have the same issues like when you play like Red Dead Redemption or something like that, a video game, and it makes you do like a mission or two to learn the rules. I hate it. I sometimes can't even get through the whole game.
Just don't like tutorials.
I can't stand it. Let me free immediately. I'll figure it out myself.
Let me do what I want.
In the face, I'll just figure it out.
He doesn't like to be told what to do. He doesn't like humor or cartoons in his rule books. He likes just Google Docs with no color.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a joy.
That's true. Yeah.
But I'm bringing Iridia, so if you want to jump into the game.
I do want to check it out.
Okay.
I can teach you without the walkthrough.
Oh, all right.
You play without
since I know it, the walkthrough wouldn't be so bad for me anymore, because it was learning rules that way is brutal for me.
Right. That's
like
fair.
don't tell me that now roll the dice. I need to know why I'm rolling the die.
Yeah.
And I need to know what the results of those dice are. Blah blah. Like if I don't know the rules behind why I'm doing it, it makes it so hard for me to understand. So
I get
it's
that.
a personal
totally
thing for me.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
But now that I know, going through that walkthrough would be fine, and I could take people through it pretty quickly and get to the good stuff.
Yeah, very cool. Awesome.
I look forward to it.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Jaysen. It was really good. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And you will be, are you going to Origins?
I'm going to go to Origins for 2 days.
Okay.
So a friend of mine is getting married that weekend, but she's getting married in Cleveland. And Origins is in
Columbus.
So I'm going to go to Origins for 2 days and then drive up for her wedding.
Good.
Makes sense.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Cool. And then any more information about the stuff we talked about at the top of the show, there's links in the show notes so people can find out more about what you do and what you publish in your your books that are coming out, and your TikToks and your book talks and your whispers and crinkles and all those great things.
And all the crazy things I do.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for watching. Very much appreciate it.
Say hi to Carl.
Yes, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Hit the likes and the buttons and there you go. Do all that. Appreciate it.
Amazing.
See ya.
Thanks, everybody. I'll get to hit the button twice.